Welcome to Inside the Birds Pregame live here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook on Delaware Ave in Philly, where Philly loves a winner. Hey, the Eagles took a week off, so did we. But now we're back. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside my co-host Adam Caplan. Joining us, as always, we've got former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant. What's the matter, Jay? You don't look. Oh, is that your gangster pose? Your team won. All right. And of course, we've got our tape breakdown master, Greg Cosell. You guys ready after a nice week off, all refreshed, ready to go?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Yeah?
I had a week off. We had a week off from this. I didn't really have a week off.
Well, none of us really had a week
None of
off.
us do.
Exactly. Exactly. It just felt like a week off.
Right,
You know you missed the show, Greg, though. know
I
you
did. You know,
of course.
there's no
I could
place
tell.
I'd rather be than right here, right now.
Wow,
That's
thank
right.
you, Marv.
That's right. Well, a lot has happened in the NFL since we last did our show, but the Eagles remain undefeated, as, of course, you can't lose during the bye week. And, of course, the Birds return to the link today. They are 6-0, and they have a date with the intrastate rival, Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers, who changed quarterbacks 4 weeks ago, they fell to 2-5 in their last game. It was a Sunday night loss to the Dolphins, 16-10. This is potentially the first Steelers team under Mike Tomlin to finish under 500. They are on pace for that. We'll see if they can get their act together, but for now it would be the first one. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Eagles are double-digit favorites today for the first time all year long. So you can talk about teams looking like they're going in opposite directions right now. We'll see at the end of the game what happens. Plenty of time to come down to Rivers Casino. We have some awesome things going on today. Of course, there's drink specials and food specials here at Jack's Bar and Grill. We got people, they're doing some upgrades in the sportsbook, which is already one of the best sportsbooks we've been at. So you can come down here, watch the game, lots of gigantic flat screen TVs, fantastic food and drink specials, and of course, not only can you come watch the pregame show, but after, Adam and I are going to stick around and have a watch party for this Eagles-Steelers game. So you can hang with us. We'll have Jason maybe sign a few things to give away, and we're going to have a great time watching the game with the people here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook. For those watching on YouTube or whatever social media platform, give us a like, give us a share, leave a comment on the YouTube chat box. We will try to get to it. Leave your score prediction. We'll try to read it. We got a great show, a lot to discuss. A lot of things have happened with the Eagles, a lot of things happening with the Steelers. So this will be a very, very detail-oriented show. So get your questions in, and we will try to have them answered. Fellas, you guys ready?
Still
Been a week?
Do it.
All right, sounds good. All right, obviously, the Eagles made a very big move this past week coming out of the bye. They traded with the Bears for three-time Pro Bowl pass rusher Robert Quinn. We'll get into the X's and O's of that. I want to kind of take a big picture look about right now about what that kind of move does for the Philadelphia Eagles. And Jason, I want to start with you because on the last Q&A podcast that you do with Quentin Michael on the Inside the Birds platform, you had said, you guys both agreed that right now in the NFC, there's the Eagles and then there's the rest of the NFC, the way you've seen it through the first 8 weeks. So getting Robert Quinn, who is a very accomplished pass rusher, is that a move in your mind that says go for the jugular right there?
Yeah, this was a Howie Roseman dream move. This team is right on the precipice of being, a Super Bowl contender, and they are. But you want to take that step in order to make them one of the best teams in the National Football League, competing in both divisions. I think the AFC is a stronger, more competitive division as of today. And you make this move for the Eagles, you can play with the Bills. You can play with these teams. Robert Quinn, 18.5 sacks, 3-time Pro Bowler. He's gone over 10 sacks 5 times in his career. So when you consider that, and you have a young guy in Josh Sweat, a lot of young guys, Tulopu, I can't always say his name, but
Tui
Pelotu. And you have a lot of young guys. You have Johnson and many other guys that can use his veteran leadership and also his past nuances. That's one thing about Robert Quinn. He's a passing the quarterback like extraordinaire, just getting in and out of his moves and using hands. So I think this just helps our team all around. And also Derek Barnett replacing that production.
Right. Greg, we'll get into X's and O's and what Robert Quinn brings from a tape standpoint, but I want to ask you, this is a stable of pass rushers he joins that, you've got Hassan Reddick, who's had 2 years of double-digit sacks. You got Josh Sweat, who's always been an emerging player. Brandon Graham, who's come back strong. Is he, though, their best right now, is he their best pass rusher?
Robert Quinn?
Robert Quinn. Did they just add their best pass rusher to the group?
Possibly. I mean,
Okay.
Reddick's a really good pass rusher as well, I think, and has done so this year. Quinn is a very good pass rusher. He's at his best working on the high side. He can still bend. He's still flexible. You know, it'll be interesting. I guess the big question for me, when you're looking maybe a little more big picture, before we get to sort of how it might map out today and in the games going forward, is who's going to lose snaps?
Yeah.
That's kind of the big question to me.
Right.
Because, you know, someone's not going to be happy.
Yeah.
Someone's going to lose snaps.
This is a little different than in 2017 when you acquired Jay Ajayi. The guy who lost snaps was Wendell Smallwood, and nobody cared. Right. Like, this is a situation where everybody's sort of playing well enough to deserve their time here, and they'll have to figure that out.
But the bottom line is, and I know Jason would agree with this, on the defensive side of the ball, there's two positions that every coach in the league would say you never have enough of: pass rusher and corner.
Right.
So whenever you have the opportunity to acquire a pass rusher, you take that opportunity.
Yeah, I think they want to build their rotation, right? Because this team plays a bunch of guys, and I think, like I said, Derek Barnett being hurt for the year takes away some of that production. So I think that, you know, we're going to see Robert Quinn play a lot of snaps, and this is a position where you don't need a lot of, you know, homework in order to play today.
Right.
You can put him on a third down situation. He can come and plug and play. Just say, man,
go get
outside.
quarterback.
Yeah, keep outside contain and, you know, whatever, and rush quarterback.
Rush the high side.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is, the way this team, I think, sees themselves, and it's played out to some degree through the first part of the season, through the 6-0, is they see themselves as a team that's going to get ahead in games.
Yes.
They're not a team that's playing to get to the fourth quarter in a close game. They're playing to get ahead.
Right.
And when you get ahead, what does that result in? It results in your opponent having to throw the ball more. So now you rush the quarterback.
Absolutely.
That's, you know, it's the old, the way the Colts used to play when they had Peyton Manning, and the belief was, hey, you can play a Robert Mathis at 235 pounds because they're ahead. And Robert Mathis does not have to line up and take on 320-pound offensive tackles in the run game, snap after snap after snap. He can rush the quarterback.
Right.
So I think the Eagles see themselves as a team that is going to get ahead, and in the third and fourth quarter, we can rush the quarterback.
It's funny because Zach Berman of The Athletic asked him, Robert Quinn, in his press conference this past week.
I loved it.
To the question of, what do you think it's like to be able to just tee off on a quarterback when you're up 2 scores in the fourth quarter?
And he said he didn't know.
And he had a pregnant pause, and he said, I'll let you know.
I'll let you know, exactly.
The guy's only
phenomenal.
he's played in 2 playoff games his entire career, and they both lost.
Yeah,
So,
and he's like, I saw a stat the other day when he first was acquired that he's faced 58 double teams. The next highest guy was 40.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, the next highest guy behind him because no one.
You know, and it's funny. I saw that exact same thing.
Yeah.
And because I saw it too, of course, we all look at social media. Somebody said, well, he's no longer as good as he was. He only has 1 sack. You know, that's a classic case where if you're not watching tape, 1 sack could mean something or it could mean nothing.
Right.
You've got to watch the tape to know what that means.
Of course.
You know, he still has the ability to rush the quarterback.
Well, luckily for us, we have somebody who watches a lot of tape. And we're going to get to that breakdown a little bit later.
Grandpa.
Adam, fans are greedy, as you would expect them to be. You wouldn't be a good fan if you weren't greedy, right? So even though they just acquired Robert Quinn, the biggest question fans have next is, what about another trade? I mean, the trade deadline is still a couple of days away on Tuesday. So what are you hearing about any other potential acquisitions?
Well, I didn't know he was going to say this, but Greg talked about how the Eagles like to score early and run to win. Right. The running back position is one that they're looking at. We've heard from other teams, because you and I do the same thing.
Right.
When we were looking at this particular team, we go, hey, what are you hearing about Philly? What's the chatter? And personnel guys, some other teams mentioned the first thing they told us was pass rusher, check. The next thing we heard was running back.
Right.
Now, let's address Kareem Hunt, because I know there are a lot of rumors with the Eagles there. We've heard from sources around the league that this is something that the Eagles have discussed.
Right.
But the issue that other teams have had with Kareem Hunt is, the Browns for several weeks wanted a second-round pick, and that was like, he's a really good backup running back and a guy you could plug and play, but they're not getting a second-round pick. So the word around the league is they've lowered their asking price.
Okay.
To around a 4th-round pick. Again, the Eagles just gave up a 4th for Robert Quinn, who, by the way, he absolutely could start.
Yes.
There's no question about it.
They also gave up a 4th for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So how many 4s are you willing to?
The other issue too is, the Eagles, I'm sure, within their building, have made the decision that Jalen Hurts is their quarterback.
Yep.
So they don't. I know that Howie likes to do a lot of trading, and everybody wants more picks, but they no longer, I would think, in their mind, have to keep accumulating picks to trade up for a quarterback.
Right.
So I'm not saying they just want to give away picks. No one wants to just give away picks.
Right.
But the point is, if there's a trade to be made that requires them to maybe give up a little higher pick than maybe they thought initially going into that discussion, if it's a player they think they really want, they might be willing to do that. Because they don't need to accumulate all those picks now for a quarterback.
Yeah, and you have 2 first-round picks the next year, I believe, right?
Yeah,
so
there's the Saints.
So that right there, a first-round pick, and you don't need a quarterback, that can equate to 4 or 5 more picks.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? So you never know.
And plus, when they get to that, Jason, if they don't go for a quarterback, they could trade down and accumulate a lot of those picks that they lost. So, but look, we'll see. We talked Friday on our show that dropped. What's the next position? And I said, I'm hearing running back, but I'm not super strong on it. That's when I didn't know what the landscape was for running back.
Right.
But I think the McCaffrey trade, you look at it, that's 4 draft picks. No one's going for 4 draft picks for any running back. I know the Alvin Kamara rumor will address that. I don't see that happening with the Eagles.
Why don't you address the Kamara rumor right now?
So I think what happened is, again, it's not a secret the Eagles have been looking at running back. Jeff and I have said on our show for a couple months now, who is your 4-minute back? Who is your when you get a big lead, who's that guy? Now, I know they've run the heck out of the football late, as they all finished. Like, obviously, Sanders is a lead back, but they've gone with Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, and that's great. But if Sanders got hurt, who's your guy?
Right.
And when you're a great football team, and the Eagles are the best, clearly in the NFC right now, maybe the NFL, what is your answer if somebody gets hurt? You always have to have an answer, especially when you're a great football team. The Eagles didn't think they had an answer in running back in 2017, so they made the trade for Ajayi, which was, by the way, a 4th rounder, was it?
4th rounder.
4th round pick?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Do you think, from what you've heard, is Kamara available?
The word around the league is, Greg, it would take a McCaffrey-like deal offer just for them to think about it.
Right.
Now, his situation is, his base salaries are way lower than McCaffrey's.
Right.
But he's got the pending potential suspension next year for neighborhood 4 to 6 games. He's had a knee issue over his career, and you got to look at that stuff.
No question.
Yeah. Great player, but
great player.
Right. We know. I think the important thing that we're summarizing here is that the Eagles have done their evaluations and homework on available running backs. David Montgomery, another name from the Bears that is potentially could be available. So we'll see what happens with that. Let's move on. Any other position that you think that they might want to target?
I thought corner, we just talked about it. Greg's talked about you can never have as many corners and pass rushers, right? And again, what happens with if one of the top 2 corners gets hurt? Well, it's either Zach McPherson, they can move Maddox outside, and then they can move Josiah Scott inside. So they do have an answer, though I don't think Maddox is a great outside corner, but they do have that internally. Whereas at safety, right now, they've had a big problem. If one of the 2 stars gets hurt,
Johnson,
I mean, you can't tell
or
me
even
that.
Epps.
But I said if Epps or
right. Wallace right now to me, I just don't get the feeling, talking to people around the league, that they're totally satisfied with that. That's another position to keep an eye on. But we know it's hard to get. Look, the Gardner-Johnson trade, those things rarely happen. The Eagles were smart to be in contact with Mickey Loomis, their GM of the Saints. They knew that they were at loggerheads over his extension. Eagles, as they did with Jason Peters, they knew in 2009 Peters was having problems getting his contract extended. The Eagles pounced.
Right.
Never say never, but there they have the starters. Just they need depth. To me, they need a veteran backup safety who started before. Look at Corey Graham, somebody like that.
Right. All right, so we will see if the Eagles make any moves. The one thing I've learned as a reporter about the trade deadline is that the trade deadline and the trade market never makes sense. I mean, we've seen Randy Moss go for, did he go for a 4th round pick? I believe that's the same thing that the Eagles gave up to get Jannard Avery a couple of years ago.
Right.
There's always context involved as far as contract, the standing with the team, but in general, there's never any good apples to apples barometer to use for trade market.
I think we need a returner.
A returner?
We need a returner.
Well, Greg Ward's back.
You're not a big fan? You're not happy?
We need a returner, someone that can make a play on special teams, because that can, lose your game when you come down to those really, really good teams in the playoffs.
Let me tell you, Jay, when you're sitting at 7-0 thinking, man, we really need a returner, or a third
would be
safety,
6-0.
you know you're doing pretty good. 6-0, my
you're
fault.
doing
I'm not
good.
trying to get presumptuous,
You're
but
doing good.
that just shows you how good things have been for the Eagles
Yeah.
these days. All right, not only have things been good from a win-loss standpoint, but an injury standpoint. The Eagles come into today's game rested from the bye week with nobody on the injury report designated with an injury. Isaac Seumalo was fine with the ankle. Lane Johnson expected to play after the concussion 2 weeks ago. Brandon Graham, the hammy, missed a little time. He's set to go. And, of course, Josh Jobe, who's the rookie undrafted from Alabama, has been missing some time with a shoulder injury. He's expected to play, too. Eagles are good in that regard.
What do you hear? Because I watched Josh Jobe his last 2 years in college, and I know there were some other concerns with Josh Jobe, background, other things.
Yes.
I thought, first of all, that his tape was very worthy of being a draftable player.
Well, the Eagles had draftable grades, by the way, on
yes,
him.
yeah. And I thought that given where he played, given the fact that he played all different kinds of coverages, because that's what they do at Alabama, and given his size, you know, he's not a small guy, he's put together.
Right.
I thought that down the road, okay, again, I don't know Josh Jobe at all. I don't know if you know him at all.
Don't know.
I thought that he had the traits to be a starting corner in this league. Now, I'm not saying he's ready to go today if you know, either Slay or Bradbury were to get hurt.
Right.
But I think he has the traits to be a starting corner. What's your sense from talking to people?
Yes. He grades around the NFL 5 through 7. Was he hurt in this spring, or was there something going on? Because I was kind of surprised he wasn't drafted.
Well,
Yeah,
I think it was just character concerns.
There
that
were
hurt.
major character concerns
Yeah.
from what I've heard. I don't
Okay.
usually, when I talk to Paul, I don't get into that,
Yeah, sure.
because I don't know. Unless you're having those
Yeah.
conversations and know the guy.
Yeah.
But
don't
I
touch
did
that,
hear
you know?
I hear this guy had decent enough length, wasn't what you would call fast, but definitely had starter traits.
Yeah.
So maybe the Eagles feel for the future, because remember their 2 starting corners are 30 years or older,
Right.
and they don't really have the future at that position on the roster right now.
And don't forget, and I know a lot of scouting departments believe this, you know this too, where he's played in big games against quality opponents,
Sure. Right.
quality receivers.
Right.
So it's not as if he does not have that pedigree.
And I would say with Zach McPherson, one thing to round off this corner position, when we talk to other teams, the thing you hear is, boy, Philly likes him a lot more than we did. And that's fine. Look, Zach McPherson is the 3rd outside corner. I get that. So that's something that they'll have to wrestle with. If they don't make any move at the trade deadline,
Then he's the guy.
yeah, if somebody gets hurt, he's in.
Hey, somehow.
he doesn't run well enough.
See, I agree with
and
you.
that's the bottom line. At corner, you need speed to spare in this league.
Wasn't he a better slot corner at Texas Tech than he was an outside corner?
He
Zach
played
McPherson?
both.
Right.
And again, that draft,
Uh-huh.
he was the only player, and again, I'm just giving you my opinion. You know, people can watch tape and have different points of view, different interpretations of what they see. He was the only player in that draft class that I did not particularly like on tape.
Okay.
So I didn't see him as a starting quality corner in the NFL.
What were the issues that if you could recall? Like anything in particular?
I didn't think overall he had enough juice to his movement. I didn't think he was quick enough.
Okay.
I didn't think
Not
he
very flexible
changed-
in the
I didn't
hips
think he
for-
changed direction particularly well. I didn't think he was particularly loose-hipped. You know, I thought he was kind of a methodical, measured mover, and I don't think that really is good enough on the outside in the NFL.
You gotta be an athlete to be out
Would you
there.
agree with that?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
You gotta be a really good athlete, especially when it comes to quickness.
Yeah.
You know, usually you want your cornerbacks to be much faster and quicker
Right.
than the receiver.
He was
because they're gonna-
competitive.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, he was all those other those good things that you like, competitive and all that. I just didn't think he had the traits to be an
Gotcha.
outside corner as a starter.
All right. As far as Eagles transactions, we mentioned Greg Ward back on the back on the practice squad. We'll see if they elevate him for any reason, but obviously Britton Covey probably looking behind over his shoulder a little bit. Cameron Dicker, the kicker who was on the practice squad, who had to start a game, has been released. They brought back Teron Jackson, the outside linebacker who got waived when they added Robert Quinn. They have brought Teron Jackson back to the practice squad. Now, for the Steelers, their injury situation, a lot more dire. They are missing TJ Watt again. Now, there was some kind of buzz. People thought he might come back based on some of his comments, but the guy had knee and pectoral surgery. He's making progress, but he's definitely out today, along with defensive tackle Larry, I hope I pronounced it right, Ogunjobi?
Yep.
Good job. And he's a good player.
He is a good player.
What do you
right?
like about him?
He's one of those interior guys who's really good.
He's a
with
Steelers
his
lineman.
hands. He's physical. He's
Yeah.
tough. He's a really good run defender. Really good run.
Who has been replacing him in their front?
Tyson Alualu.
The
My God,
ageless.
he is still around.
Yeah,
huh?
former Jaguar first-round pick in 2010. I
Like
think.
top 15 pick, I believe.
It was a shocker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a shocker to his agent, but that's another thing.
Yeah. Well,
He
you
loved
know, they got hurt a little bit this offseason when Stephon
They play,
Pruitt
the
decided not to come
Michigan kid
back.
a lot too. Wormley gets a lot of snaps.
Chris Wormley,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And Tuitt, as you said, Jeff, retired. That was big. They
yeah.
brought up a guy from the practice squad for depth, Davis, but
They play louder, milk a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
They're not as bad against the run as they were last year when the NFL's worst.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
And the other one is Chris Boswell.
He's out.
Unfortunately, he hurt his groin, right groin, on Thursday. Didn't practice on Friday. They downgraded him to out on Saturday. And they what they did was funny. They brought back a guy that they had in training camp, Josh Skiba. They had to sign him yesterday. So he hasn't been with them for a while, but he's a kicker. You can either kick or you can't, and he's going to have to kick today in the link.
I don't think you need to be with a team for a long time to line up and kick.
No, but you don't. But you don't
Well,
know
the
those
whole
crosswinds.
process of holding,
Hey, hang
right?
on,
The
the
timing?
crosswinds here at the link. You know
That just
that.
reminds me of a great NFL Films bite with Parcells
Oh,
years
okay.
ago. And I
Yeah.
forget who the kicker was, and I guess a doctor or a trainer came up to him and they were walking off the field and said something about an injury, and Parcells just stood up and said, "He's a kicker."
I love it.
Also out for the Steelers today is cornerback Levi Wallace, so somebody missing from their secondary. However, good news for them, they do get Ahkello Witherspoon back. I believe he was out last 4 games with a hamstring injury. I just know that they really were happy to bring him back in the offseason. They thought he kind of
Played
came
well
into his
last
own
year,
last
down
year.
the
Yeah,
stretch.
yeah. Tight end Pat Fryermuth from the greatest university there is in America will play today despite a little ankle injury that he's nursing. So look for Pat Fryermuth to be involved in the passing game. And that's it for Steelers injuries. Everybody else good to go. And let's get into the show, fellas. In fact, we already have
I thought we are into the show.
Well, I mean,
now we really get it. Now we really get
that's
it.
just injuries, Greg. By the way, Carl Stevenson, our loyal viewer, says Birds win today 27-14. He also predicts the Phillies to win in 6. So they'll need some better starting pitching for that to happen. And Tyler says 28-9, go Birds. All right. The
He
Eagles.
likes the under.
Yeah, right. The Eagles certainly fell behind the scenes a little bit this past week, especially for being undefeated, as the Phillies did steal the headlines. But they stormed back onto the scene when they traded for 3-time Pro Bowl pass rusher Robert Quinn. Now, we've seen Howie Roseman be no stranger to deadline deals. We talked about Jay Ajayi. We've talked about Jannard Avery, Golden Tate, a couple of years, 2 years after the Super Bowl. Yeah, so we shouldn't be surprised to see Howie Roseman make a big splash here. This one may be the biggest of all. Greg, I wanted to ask you about Quinn's tape now, not just, the big picture look. When you watch him on tape, certainly this year, but you've watched him for years now, what jumps out as far as measurables, athleticism, ability, skill set? Tell me what you see in him.
Well, Quinn, from the time he came out of college, and you probably remember he had that neck injury coming out of college.
Yeah.
At UNC.
Out of North
And
Carolina,
a lot
right.
of people, he ended up being a first-round pick, but there are a lot of people who thought he could be a really high first-round pick because he has everything you want when it comes to edge pass rush. He's at his best as a high-side pass rusher, meaning attacking the outside shoulder of the offensive tackle and then clearing the arc because he can bend, he's flexible, he can really bend off that inside ankle. A lot of scouts, you hear the term ankle flexion. He can
Do we
do
not
that.
just say?
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
What Derek Barnett was supposed to possess.
Right, which he doesn't quite at the level you want.
Right.
But Quinn does. He's long, and he's very athletic. He's also really good in stunts. Now the Eagles are not necessarily a big stunt team,
right?
But he's really good as the looper in stunts because of that body flexibility and that short area closing burst. So he's been a really good pass rusher. I mean, that's what he is.
Right.
People just look at sack numbers. Obviously, he set the Bears record a year ago, but sack numbers are not always indicative of how well someone is rushing the quarterback.
He has a lot of forced fumbles in his career. Is that a byproduct that you see of? He has long arms, right, for his size.
34.
Is he just naturally in tune to where the ball is, or do you think he just has a good, that slap?
I think guys work on that.
Right.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think anybody who creates a lot of fumbles, I think that's a trait that they work on. Now, it can't always happen, obviously, but I think that guys are very conscious of that and they work on it, and I think that's probably coached as well.
Right.
Yeah, every defensive coach is always talking about breaking the football out. You know, and you know Charles Woodson lived by the motto that you attack the ball, they'll fall. Right. So yeah, and it's true. Like if somebody's hitting the ball, automatically you stop your feet and try to go down. It's like, you know, so.
Jay, let's talk about the pass rush, because it's been in the front four rush. It's been inconsistent outside the Washington game. I think
they had two games where they had a lot of sacks.
Yeah.
9 against Washington,
Right, 9 against Washington. Most of them came in that Washington game. But I want to ask you, just adding Robert Quinn, how much do you think that will impact the defense right to begin with?
Well, it depends on how many snaps he's playing. I believe that he is a guy that will demand a lot of snaps, especially when you're considering a team that you guys talk about is playing ahead, right? Because we've seen that most of the year, and teams having to rely on the pass. This is where you want a guy like Robert Quinn, him and Hassan Reddish, to close out football games and create mismatches, right? So I think that he should play a lot of snaps, and I think that you go into the elite level if he's playing a lot. That's just the way I've always felt about Robert Quinn as far as his ability to rush the passer. There's some dudes that have a knack for it. You can't always put your hand on it. This guy's around the football. You don't have 100+ career sacks and not know how to get to the quarterback. He has that for a reason. I don't think there's any drop-off from this year and last year besides, you know, Khalil Mack and a bunch of guys not being on his team, you know, and him being the primary focus.
Give me the player perspective from, all right, you're in the locker room, you're Brandon Graham, you're Hassan Reddick, you're Josh Sweat, and now you brought in a guy who, it's not even arguable, has a better career, at least resume, than all three of them. Do they welcome him in? Does it vary by person? How do you think this will impact the chemistry there?
I think because the team is winning, and this is a winning organization with a winning pedigree, you want what's best for the team. And I think that you have a bunch of guys that have had success and they're comfortable with who they are, they're confident, they're Super Bowl champions, a lot of those guys. So I don't think it would be a problem with him coming into the organization, especially after his press conference. He said, I don't want to mess it up.
Right.
So he's not coming in with the big ego, big bravado. He's not coming in, you know, look, I'm the man, you guys bow down to me. He's coming in, how can I fit into this organization? And I think that's the right approach for anybody to go into a new organization.
And it gives him a chance to get a ring. I mean, this is what this is what guys want. He's made all the money in the world, right? He now has a chance. He turns 33 in June before he retires to get a ring. I mean, what a great way to potentially end your career over the next couple of years.
Again, the guy has played in 2 playoff games, lost both. His team lost both, and I don't think either one was particularly close. So this is probably his best opportunity to get one. Adam, there were and are still a couple of names out there from a pass rushing standpoint as far as availability. We're hearing Josh Allen from the Jaguars. Why was Robert Quinn the one for the Eagles?
Okay, so it's funny, everyone's calling this a blockbuster trade. It was more the Bears trying to move him, which to this day, I'm okay, I get it. They're not very good, but they just had this incredible win at New England. No one saw that coming. They're still hanging in there for a wild card spot, but they want to focus on the future. They want to get younger at defensive end, and they were willing to eat a lot of his contract for this year. It's more of the opportunity. I think people need to understand. It's not like the Eagles said, okay, this is our focus, as you just mentioned, Robert Quinn. It's the situation came about. Ian Cunningham's in the front office. He used to work for the Eagles. It just all worked out. And to me, if he's anywhere close to what he was, this is a steal.
And the Bears also, they have a young pass rusher. They want to get more snaps. He's a rookie. Might have been a 4th-round pick or so.
The 3rd rounder. I know you're talking about.
Robinson. Who's actually a really intriguing player because he did not go to college as a pass rusher.
Right.
And he's a really athletic kid because I watched his tape. And
Dominique Robinson.
Dominique Robinson. And he's flashed this year. And you can see the athletic traits, and they want to get him more snaps.
Sure.
And it's tough to do that. You know, I know what you said about technically they're in the wild card and all that, and they hope Fields continues to develop further, but they just wanted to get this kid a lot more snaps, and it was not going to happen if Quinn was there.
Right. The feedback I got talking with league sources was, you're right, not a blockbuster, it was just a 4th-round pick, but the fact that the Eagles and Howie Roseman were able to get the Bears to pick up so much money on the contract made it such a win-win move for the Eagles. I mean,
no brainer. It's funny, other people in the league were like, how the heck did they get this and we can't get that?
Right.
But they were in first, I guess.
Well, that also tells you the Bears were willing to.
They wanted this done.
Get rid of him.
Yeah, they were looking to do this for actually a while, as I understand it.
Right.
And as you just mentioned, Robinson and other guys, get him on the field. Because remember, Ryan Poles inherited this player and the contract, Quinn, and they want to see their younger players develop because they're in an evaluation phase to see who comes back next year.
Right. So for perspective on the type of player that the Eagles are adding, and again, he's on the downside of the career, but last year he had a double-digit sack year. Since the start of 2010, he is 6th in sacks. I mean, company with Von Miller is leads with 115.5.
Well,
Chandler Jones.
I would say that he's later in his career.
Yeah, I don't
know
agree
if
with
he's on the downside the way people think of the word
he's
downside.
33, correct?
Right. So he's later in his career. But
Okay.
he's not a descending player.
I always thought downside just meant like you're closer to your end than your beginning. I'm not trying to say he's a lesser
you could
player.
say back 9.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, if you want to say it that way, but I don't think he's.
Because one thing I want out of this before we move on. So
Tough crowd
do you
here,
think
man.
downside kind of
no,
means
but
he's
I'm gonna
down?
but I'm gonna play into that.
Yeah.
So
I think you guys are saying the same thing.
Yeah. We're probably saying the same
No,
thing.
but
I'm on the downside of my career, fellas. That's
it's
all I know.
Not as far as you know.
I'm definitely on the back.
No,
nine
that
of
I
my
agree
career.
with. Yeah, just take a look.
Yeah.
We say it with love as far as you know. Yeah, as far as you know. But look, the bottom line is when you look at Robert Quinn, we had someone who graded him. He knew about the 18.5 sacks when he looked at the numbers. He goes, he counted like well into 50 quarterback pressures by NFL standards, not by PFFs.
Right.
Because there's always this nebulous, okay, what is a quarterback pressure by PFF? We love them.
Right.
But no, this is actually making the quarterback move off his spot. That's a real NFL pressure. The guy who graded him said over 50.
Well, to me, I mean, when I'm studying guys, to me, I'm looking at the first 2-3 steps because there's a lot of guys who pressure quarterbacks later in the down, and not that that's a bad thing to be able to do.
Sure.
But there's a lot of secondary sacks. There's a lot of sacks that occur because the quarterback holds the ball, or many reasons. I'm looking to see what happens in the first 2-3 steps because that's when you're working against who you're working against.
Sure. Right. Did you beat him or not? Right.
Winning.
Win rate.
Win rate.
You're right. So even if you don't get a sack,
right.
I mean, when I watch college players, when I do my tape study after the NFL season and start watching college players, that's how I'm looking at pass rushers.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it's a great trade if a guy, pass rusher runs around and gets a sack later in the down. Yeah, that's good too. But that's not, to me, how you evaluate and judge a true pass rusher.
Sure, absolutely. All right, so to get the ageless Robert Quinn outball, one of 6 NFL players
beat him up to
who has 100 or more sacks since 2010. But let's get back to the question that Greg kind of brought up in the big picture segment is, when you've got Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, and Brandon Graham, how do you make it all work for now? Who comes off the field, and what do your pass rush packages look like? So, Greg, I'll go to you first. What do you think?
Well, you didn't trade for Robert Quinn to play 10 snaps a game. Okay,
No.
he can play a lot of snaps. He may not play 65, but not 10. So the question is then, what does their sub fronts look like?
Right.
Because let's look at the sub fronts.
Yeah.
Will they stay with a lot of 5-1? They could do that. This is a team that plays both 4-2 nickel and 5-1 nickel.
Right.
Okay, so they could play more 5-man fronts if they choose to. Even in their 4-man, will they go more with what a lot of teams call NASCAR or cheetah?
Yeah.
And go with Quinn on the outside, maybe with Reddick on the outside, Sweat, Graham, Cox, any combination on the inside.
Right.
They certainly could do that because you want to get. I think Josh Sweat could work very effectively against guards. We've seen Graham do that.
Yeah.
He's been in there in past years.
Yeah.
So they could do a lot more of that. And don't forget, if you go with a 5-man front, you almost always dictate, it's not 100%, but you almost always dictate one-on-one protection.
Sure.
Because you will see offensive linemen have to set to the player in front of them. Mm-hmm. So now you're creating one-on-ones.
Right.
I think it affects Hargrave's snaps more than anyone.
I agree.
Say this again.
I think it affects Hargrave's snaps.
I was going to ask you, is that the guy who kind of loses that? And that's sort of a hot hand thing because you would have never done this last year, even if you acquired Quinn.
But last year, remember, his sacks were in spurts.
Yep.
It wasn't necessarily that he was an overall dominant player.
First 8 weeks, especially, yeah.
It's that he had a string full of sacks in a row, but you need consistent play. Mm-hmm. And we know that he gets pushed back a bunch in a run game when it comes to holding up double teams and things like that. So I think this is going to affect his snap some way because you do have Sweat that can play inside pretty effective. You have Brandon Graham, who historically have done really well versus guards. So,
definitely.
Especially in those third down situations. I think that you may see him off the field a little bit more.
I think we're getting, and this is a discussion for later in the year, maybe off season, but Javon Hargrave with this new defense and with the fact that we thought maybe he'd get an extension in the off season. He did not. Now he's getting a step closer to free agency. We'll have to see if he's still part of the long-term plans for this team going forward, especially as they're kind of remaking the defensive line there.
The big question is this. When they play teams that throw a lot on early downs, okay? May not be the Steelers today.
Yeah.
But when they play teams that throw a lot on early downs out of 11 personnel, will it affect Jordan Davis's snaps? Because I spoke to someone in the organization who basically told me that Davis can't play any more snaps than he's playing now. His body can't handle it.
Right.
So the question is, will it impact his snaps when they play teams that throw a lot on what would be considered run-type downs out of 11 personnel?
It's kind of what the Cowboys started to do, I thought, in the second half 2 weeks ago, throwing on first down, then trying to set up the run when they went to the nickel, which they had some success in the second half doing. That's a very interesting point on Jordan Davis. So we saw Jonathan Gannon get new toys this offseason for his defense and change a little bit, Adam, as far as being willing to blitz a little bit more. Now that he adds Robert Quinn, and we just talked about maybe more five-man fronts on pass rush downs, do you see a change in play calling here because of Quinn or even personnel groupings?
No, blitz percentage, not really. I think he's kind of settled into that 24.5%, 25% per game. They're somewhere past the middle, around 18. That's not really what he believes in. So, no, but situationally, yes, depending on the opponent.
Right.
Because Quinn, Greg, did they ever flip him with Chicago? Did they move?
He plays both sides?
He can. He's done that in his career. Absolutely.
So absolutely, to me, then, you can do that. It's not about how much you blitz, it's how you do it.
Right.
And to me, we need to see over the A-gap, you could stand him up, move him over either side. But no, to answer your question, I don't see them blitzing a lot more. It's again how you do it, because now you put him out there.
Right.
Josh Sweat, who's incredible. Grant, you could go NASCAR, obviously, nickel.
Yeah.
Or third and long. This thing could look really interesting.
Here's the question I would have.
Yeah.
Because as you know, coaches like to tweak, and you know this.
Sure.
This is what these guys do.
Yeah.
They sit up at night and they tweak.
Especially coming out of the bye.
Right. Will we see some five-man fronts and dime with no linebackers on the field? Will we see, in a sense, of 5-6? Because they do play dime.
Sure.
So will we see that depending on the opponent, depending on the situation?
Very interesting thought. All right. The NASCAR package question was asked by Ray Cunningham, one of our Patreon subscribers. It was a very good question because now they have that optionality. If you want to be a part of our Patreon community, you go to patreon.com/Inside The Birds. You get bonus podcasts. We did a great show with former NFL defensive coordinator Paul Gunther, a Bucks County guy. Yeah. So we've had John DiFilippo, we've had Paul Gunther. We're going to have a former NFL head coach on pretty soon too. So again, patreon.com/Inside The Birds. You get your answers, your questions answered, and of course we'll have some giveaways. There are a lot of perks to being a Patreon subscriber on our channel. Let us talk about the first test here for this new look pass rush, and that's the new look Pittsburgh Steelers, who now have a different quarterback. After 4 weeks of the season, they went to their first round pick, Kenny Pickett. I know he's a quarterback, Greg, that you had started looking at right around this time last year when Pittsburgh was successful.
Pickett, believe it or not. It goes back to the pandemic summer.
Wow.
So I watched Pickett his last 3 years at Pitt.
Was he was the starter as a 2 years ago?
He was a 4-year starter. He got
that's
the
right.
extra year because of COVID.
Right.
So he was a 4-year starter, and he came in the league at close to age 24.
Right. So he was their first round pick.
Yep.
Mitchell Trubisky was not getting the job done. They went to Pickett, who is 1-1. Now he's turned the ball over a lot. He's also had some pretty good throws we'll talk about. 7 interceptions, 2 touchdown passes, only been sacked 6 times, only 3 as a starter. Greg, when you watch their offense now with Pickett as compared to Trubisky, maybe numerically you don't see a whole lot, or the win-loss column, but are you seeing improvement there? Are you seeing something different now that he's the quarterback?
I don't want to talk for the next 5 minutes, so we'll go through this. Okay? We'll go through this.
We like when you talk.
No, there's really 2 parts to that. There's Pickett, the player,
right,
who's a far better quarterback than Trubisky. But there's also the Steelers' pass game, which I've been doing this a long time. I struggle with what they do with their pass game. I don't think it's very schematic at all.
Right.
I don't think it's a pass game that helps the quarterback a whole lot.
Yep.
I don't think it's a pass game that helps receivers a whole lot. It's a lot of one-on-one outside the numbers, and then it's a lot of short balls.
Right.
They don't really have an intermediate pass game of any real significance. You don't see a lot of things like bunches, stack, rub routes, things that help define reads and throws for a quarterback.
Okay.
So it's, for me, seeing every NFL team, and having done this for years, and I know you probably see the same thing, there's not a lot there that really helps a quarterback.
Gotcha.
So now Pickett is better than Trubisky in the sense that he's a more aggressive thrower, he's a more accurate thrower overall. He'll miss a few, but he's a more accurate thrower overall. I think he has a better sense. I guess what I'm trying to say is he knows where to go with the ball sooner than Trubisky. He knows where he wants to go with it.
Right.
And he throws a pretty good ball. Now, Pickett has some issues that he has to clean up. Pickett clearly has a tendency to leave the pocket too early. And that definitely has to be cleaned up, because while he's mobile, he's not going to make his living in the NFL being that guy.
Right.
So, it's a combination of, I think Pickett can be a quality NFL starter, no question. But I don't think the present pass game schematics are going to help him a whole lot.
Sure. Jason, before I get your input, I'm going to remind people, Kenny Pickett is from Ocean Township, New Jersey. Grew up an Eagles fan, grew up a Phillies fan, was supposed to go to Temple to play for Matt Rule. Obviously, when Matt Rule went to Baylor, things changed. He wound up going to Pitt. But this is a guy who has, familiarity with the area and has worked out in New Jersey, up in North Jersey, and trained. So he's a guy who's he knows what he's coming to here.
He's a Jersey guy.
Yeah, he's a Jersey.
Does that mean we should be nice to him?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think they'll be nice to him today.
Joe Theismann was a Jersey guy. I don't think anybody was nice to him around here yet. Joe
Theismann,
Theismann, right.
I'll follow up to that. I'll say this is that what I see from the last 3 games of Kenny Pickett is you see a younger guy that's still dealing with the NFL, what he can do, what he can't do. Now, he is an accurate passer. He's completing almost 69% of his passes. And I believe part of that is because the offense is so simplistic, right? Like you said, there's not much motion, there's not much shifting, there's not much creativity offensively. So you're going to be able to complete a higher percentage of your throws. However, you need really good athletes in order to make this type of offense work. And when we talk about really good athletes, guys that win one-on-one situations majority of the time.
Right.
You don't have these guys on your team. Claypool is not a guy that's going to go out and beat his man one-on-one majority of the time. Neither is Deontay Johnson, even though he's a fast guy. He's not going to beat him one-on-one all the time. And George Pickens is coming into his own. He's figuring it out. But like you said,
he could be that guy, though.
He can, but when you're asking these young guys to do a bunch, this is what you ask Larry Fitzgerald, or you ask in his prime. This is what you ask to, the upper echelon. That's what you want. You pay a guy a lot of money, so you don't have to think as offensive coordinator. This is not that. So I believe that he is hindered by that. But one area of concern with Kenny Pickett, he's always been a high turnover guy.
Yeah.
He's always been a 2-to-1 almost touchdown to interception guy. So for every 2, touchdown, he's going to throw an interception. So
because he's aggressive.
He's very aggressive.
He's aggressive.
You want that from a coaching perspective. You don't want the other way around.
Sure.
But he's still learning how to do this in the National Football League.
Yeah. So
interceptions, you have to look at each one as a separate entity.
Yeah, his first 3, I think you could argue none were. I mean, one's a Hail Mary, one goes off the guy's hands, and then the other was.
You have to look at each interception.
In fact, I think, Greg, you had said even though they got smoked at Buffalo, you thought they only scored 3 points. Actually played well, right?
I thought he played well given the nature of that game.
Yeah.
He competed.
Yeah, he didn't make bad throws.
Right.
And even last week, he threw 3 picks. I forget the first one.
Hail Mary.
Right. But the second one, which when they were driving in the fourth quarter, it ended up being kind of a roll down cover 3, and Javon Holland's a very good safety. And the ball came out of Pickett's hand. It didn't come out cleanly.
Right.
I didn't think the decision was bad. The ball ended up kind of wobbling and being too far inside. If it was thrown outside, it might not have been complete, but it wouldn't have been picked.
Right.
So, I think he's just in a tough spot. Now, again, I liked his tape a lot I thought he incrementally improved in college to where the point is last year at Pitt, he was really, really good.
Right.
And the interceptions his last year were not a concern.
Right.
And I think he can be a good NFL quarterback. I just think it's going to be hard under the present system.
I'll tell you this, though, Jeff. You and I talked to some scouting people who were not very high. In fact, someone very high up with the team said, high-end backup law starter, to give him a third-round grade. It's another team, not the Eagles. It's another team.
Right.
I was like, okay, then there's a scout that Greg and I know. He said he's like a 4th or 5th round pick.
Right.
I was like, really?
Yeah. It was, they were all over the map.
I thought he was way better than
I know,
that,
but it's just.
But hey, I'm not saying they're wrong and I'm right.
The issues people have, though, guys, small hands. Okay, we could all argue. You see him wearing the gloves, arm strength, and needs to build his body up a little bit, but he's tall enough. But you would hear a lot, people had problems with the way he drove the football, but he processes so well, and he played a pro system at Pitt.
Because Mark Whipple was the OC.
You might remember with the Steelers, right?
I remember him with the Eagles for a year.
That's right.
Yeah.
So look, the bottom line is everyone seemed to be over the map with this guy. Teams could not really settle on him, but the Steelers clearly liked him. That's why they took him in the first round. We'll see how worth they are.
The Steelers may have a different look, and they may not be the Steelers that you're used to, but getting back to their weapons around them, that is something that we're accustomed to the Steelers doing well, which is drafting pass catchers. You mentioned Pickens. I agree with you on Claypool. I think they drafted Calvin Austin in the 3rd round to be their slot. He's going to be out for the year, so Claypool it is for now. But the kid George Pickens, for a rookie, Greg, I remember how high on his skill set you were going into the draft.
Did you watch him coming out?
I did.
See, I loved Pickens.
Right.
I watched every one of his plays, okay? I thought Pickens was the #1 receiver in this draft class. Now, I know all about the character concerns. I talk with GMs about it. You know, I get all that. You know, I don't do that part of it because I don't work for a team. So I'm not sitting down with him or the janitor, and I'm not doing that stuff. I loved Pickens' tape, loved his tape. 6'3", about 205.
Yeah.
I thought that he was physical, competitive. I thought he had an explosive element to his game. To me, he was the classic boundary X type receiver. And I really like George Pickens' game. And I think he's shown some of that up to this point. He's asked to run a lot of individual isolation routes.
Right.
He's not going to be great at that all the time as a rookie. It doesn't work that way. But he certainly can make contested catches. He's competitive. He has really good hands. He attacks the football.
I mean, he's already made the catch of the year, though, in his, a couple weeks ago where he's falling toward the sideline and reels it in with. That was a very Jason Avant style catch, right?
That was the George Pickens type catch.
Come on, take the credit when it's given.
I appreciate it. I think that when it comes to him, like my everything that you said, I agree with. His ability to make contested catches and his hands overall is elite level hands. Right. So that's something that's really, really good. The problem that I had with Pickens, which is a small thing, is just his being subtle at the line of scrimmage. You have guys that are explosive and that can be movers down the field, but having that subtleness in order to suddenness at the line of scrimmage to make someone move left or right. That's what I struggle with him, and I think that's one of the characteristics that you can kind of see. If this guy starts to decline athletically, can he still get open?
Sure.
If he gets an injury, can he still get open? Because that right there, you don't have that'll stay with you forever, making a guy think you're doing something that you're not.
Good.
Well, one of the things, Jeff, that I like about the Eagles' offense, they scheme these guys to get open because when you watch Canada's offense, Greg just talked about it, a lot of isolation routes. In fact, someone who had graded the Steelers' offense told me, look a lot like Philly's 2020 offense under Doug Peterson.
Yeah.
Wide splits. Okay, guys, you got to go win.
Yeah.
You got to scheme guys open.
You got 2 starters that are averaging 9 yards a catch.
That's embarrassing.
Receivers, and that
can't happen.
That's tough. Like I was, a first down in the cloud of smoke guy, and I averaged more than that.
No, that's just too hard.
Jay, what'd you average per catch?
I don't know, maybe 13 or 12.
That's pretty good.
Something like that.
And it's funny. You mentioned Claypool.
Yeah.
And Claypool was really a workout warrior at the combine because I watched Claypool's tape coming out of Notre Dame. I actually almost thought, based on tape, again, because he ran a 4.38 at the combine.
Right.
His Notre Dame tape did not look 4.38.
Stiff
4.3, no.
Yeah.
In the least.
Right.
In fact, and I'm not saying I'm right, I'm just saying what I saw, I start to think of him, God, this guy could really be kind of a movement tight end because he's 6'4", 240. That's the way I kind of saw him watching his tape in college. And then he runs the 4.38 at the combine, and you know how the combine, we've been doing this for years, you know how the combine works. All of a sudden, the guy is, wow, this guy is just unbelievable.
Although their GM, Kevin Colbert, just retired, though he's consulting for the team. The guy's always right at receiver, but it's funny you mentioned Claypool. There were a lot of strong opinions against him. Maturity, which we've seen, he got benched during an overtime game last year. Not as a fluid mover. In fact, Pickett's moves better. Another thing on Pickens, the reason why he didn't go in the first round had nothing to do with the ACL rehab. It was all because of maturity. When teams don't trust you, you're not going to be drafted by them high. That's just the way it is.
And I would say this about Pickens. I don't know George Pickens, but I've heard stories just like you have.
Yeah.
But I think it says something about the kid that he came back last year in the final 4 games when he knew he was going to come out, and he didn't have to.
Yeah.
He did not have to come back and play in the last 4 games.
I wish he wouldn't have.
Yeah.
He played Michigan. And
right. And he made big catches. I mean, he only caught maybe 5 or 6 balls because he couldn't play, 50 snaps.
Right.
Because he's coming off a major ACL issue.
Sure.
But he didn't have to come back, and he did.
He competes, man.
Yeah, he competes.
We've
got
all
a lot
seen
him come off the line in the run game
Yeah.
and just shove DB. I mean, he's physical, he's competitive, he takes no prisoners. Is there more nuance and detail required in his game?
Yeah.
You could probably say that about any rookie wide receiver.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I really liked his tape.
I can tell you this. Pickens is a Steeler in the second round because Mike Tomlin was a huge supporter of Pickens. I knew that he banged the table for Pickens when it was time.
A defensive coach liking a physical receiver that
no shock,
people, no shock. Right. This is why they're running the offense that he's running. Let's just line up.
He had nothing to do with Calvin Austin, the 5'8" guy, but he had everything to run.
What a Senior Bowl week he had.
I like Calvin Austin a lot. It's a shame he's done for the year.
Let me ask you from what you mentioned about George Pickens and having great raw attributes but still learning some things. How will Darius Slay, who at times has struggled against a big physical corner, what kind of advantage will he have, though, against a rookie who maybe not be as sudden at the line of scrimmage?
Well, I think that because Darius Slay is a savant when it comes to tape and being able to weed down routes based on formation, this is as easy as a game as you can get for a starting corner that has had the success that Darius Slay's had. So it's not always about just Pickens in a one-on-one situation. It's being able to know what's coming next. And our guys have that ability because Bradbury and Slay has saw a lot of balls. And you're seeing these secondary players touching a lot of footballs. They had 12 PBUs last week. Right? So when you consider these things, I don't necessarily know if it's a one-on-one thing as much as it is. This offense is so easy that I think our guy is going to have the advantage. Now, if it comes down to a one-on-one situation, Pickens is the guy that will give, Slay those types of problems because we've seen DK Metcalf give him a lot of problems last year. So every corner hates Pickens because he's going to make him look bad in the run game. He's going to come off the line. That element there is something that you have to game plan for. You don't want to think about that lining up. But being on YouTube and being embarrassed on social media is a thing.
No, you're right.
Really?
Without question.
So
getting posterized.
So when we think of moving on to the Steelers offense, getting back to Greg's point, when you think of the Steelers, you usually think of it all starts with their run game, their offensive line, their ability to set up play action, and they have the 24th ranked pass offense and 30th ranked total offense. So they are not the Steelers of the past. They've got work to do there. But Najee Harris still had 1,700 total yards last year, Greg, as both a receiver and a rusher. This year, 3.3 yards per carry and 500
by the way,
total
last year
yards.
only 3.9.
Right,
and
he was
only
not a high.
did that because he had 188 yards in his final or second final game of the season.
Sure. What do you see from there? What I hear from people who watch your tape is that it's sort of strange to them that they're trying to run a lot to the outside when they have more of a downhill style of running back. But what do you say?
All right, I did a deep dive on Najee Harris this summer because I get asked about him a lot. Because I don't think he's a feature back in the NFL based on tape.
Okay.
I know.
Hot tape.
Wow.
I don't think,
that's
based
fair.
on tape study, I watched 7 games this summer, and I've seen every game this year. I think Najee Harris is a 240-pound back who does not run like a 240-pound back. I think that he doesn't have any lateral juice to him. I don't think, and I learned this from Fred Taylor, I don't think he can re-accelerate in confined space. So I think he's a little sluggish when where the bodies are.
Right.
So everybody who just assumes because he's 240 pounds that he's a great inside runner. I don't think he's the kind of back that when it's blocked for 3 gets 7. And I think that with his size, he should be that kind of back.
Right.
So, I understand this desire that their offense should start with the run game, and the offensive line is always an easy target. And I personally don't think the offensive line is as bad on tape as many might think. I'm not saying it's a great O-line. It might not even be top half O-line in the league. It isn't.
Right.
But I think there's more yards to be made, and I don't think he's the kind of back you can build your offense around.
Right. I can tell you this, that the Steelers would agree with you. Their offensive line has come under a lot of criticism. They know it's not the one of years ago when you had Pouncey and DeCastro and Avant, but it's not as bad from a talent standpoint as people claim it to be.
Right, and I think that it will get better. There's young players, and like I said, it definitely is not a top offensive line by any means, but that's always an easy out when an offense is not playing well, and sometimes it's valid and sometimes it's not.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars, including the voice of the Eagles. That's Mr. Merrill Reese.
Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, big thanks to our friends at Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA. If you stop in, tell them Adam and Geoff sent you, you'll get a great deal. If not, just go to SkyMotorCars.com. All right, fellas, we've talked about the Steelers, and the real men of steel, though, are actually your Philadelphia Eagles. If you look at what they've done in the turnover production department this year, as a fact, when we last saw them.
Lead the league, right?
They lead the league. Or actually, the Ravens jumped up a little bit because they played Thursday night, but we'll get into that in a second. When we saw them against Dallas, 3 more interceptions.
The Ravens have played 8 games, have they not?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They've not had a bye either.
No, they have not had a
bye.
bye.
5 versus 6.
Right. But the Eagles do lead the league in turnover ratio.
Right.
They've got 14 takeaways, and they've only given up the ball twice.
That's amazing.
Which is amazing. They are the only NFL team, the Eagles, without a lost fumble this year. And as we just mentioned, they are second in the league in takeaways with 14. Last year, the Eagles were 18th in turnover ratio and 26th in takeaways. So this is about as big of a turnaround as we could ever imagine. Adam, we talked about kind of the sustainability of this, right? Obviously, they are not going to finish plus 34 in turnover ratio. I don't even think the 85 Bears were that good.
They were not quite that good.
Yeah, they were not quite that good.
There was a Washington Redskins Super Bowl team that had a ridiculously high turn. I can't remember.
Was it over in the 30s? That would be amazing.
It's so hard to do.
I believe it was.
But I do believe, though, Geoff, when you look at, let's look at the Eagles' offense. Sirianni talked about how he's almost maniacal about it.
Yeah.
We've all been to training camp where you see Jamal Singleton, the running backs coach, with a boxing glove on the stick. That does mean something because when you see, you kind of laugh.
Yeah.
But it works, and they're super on these running backs because Sanders had a ball security issue.
Yep.
Knock on wood, not anymore, right?
Right.
He was the one you would worry about. They're just not. They're not putting the ball on the ground, and that to me is absolutely coachable. And I do believe that the turnover thing on offense absolutely is sustainable.
Right.
Because you're coached not to do that. Now the other thing is, and Jason could attest to this. Would you see like ball strip drills on defense when you were on offense, whatever team you were with? Would you see them do that? Okay, go after the ball. Go try to take it away from them. Would you see that stuff back there?
Oh yeah, 100%. You know the team that kind of made it like for my era, Peanut Tillman.
I was going to say,
yeah,
the Bears. Every team because they were shown and so many highlights, ESPN of them getting the ball out and those things, and every defense coordinator started to like rally on even when the ball would hit the ground, even when it wasn't a fumble, everybody would run to the ball anyway.
Sure.
So those guys are
Greg, when you watch the Eagles defense on tape, and they've had turnovers in a variety of ways. Could be pass rush, could be coverage, confusion, scheme. Is there something that jumps out to you as to why they've been so opportunistic this year?
There's always a level, I don't want to say luck, but there's always some of that involved with turnovers because turnovers, there was always a belief that if you were, let's say, a really aggressive pass rush team and could rush the quarterback with, whether it was with your down 4 or with pressure, with blitz, that could potentially lead more to turnovers.
Right.
The more pressure you can put on an offense to have to react more quickly, that can lead to turnovers.
Right.
But history shows that turnovers really are a year-to-year thing. It's not a sustainable thing. You could play the exact same way next year and not get turnovers.
Right. Right.
So there's, that's a hard question for me to answer, and I'm just being honest.
Plus, you come up with you're playing Kenny Pickett this week. It's just his 4th start. They've faced some quarterbacks.
Yeah, like the
this year
perfect
that
example,
are
to me, the
turnover-prone,
perfect snapshot play that speaks to turnovers is the Bradbury interception against Trevor Lawrence a few weeks ago, which was a great play by Bradbury, but it was a bust.
Shouldn't have been made.
Yeah, but it was a bust on defense.
Absolutely.
So Bradbury made a great play, right?
Yeah.
You remember the play,
I
right?
remember left side.
Yeah,
On
but
the
it was
Rolling out
a
and flat.
bust on defense. So, so how do you figure that into the equation?
Exactly. So go ahead.
I'll say this though. It seems to me, I don't necessarily know how sustainable over time when you take away plays like that. But let's go back to this last game. All 3 of those plays were forced plays.
Right.
Those were plays that can be made by anyone at any time.
Right.
You get the first one, I recognize who I'm going against. Gallup that's coming off an injury. I don't believe that he can beat me deep. Let me play tight because I have safety help over the top. And that's just being a veteran player, understanding the scenario. I touch a pass, tip it up in the air, it's interception. The next one, Darius Slay, 22 man. I have underneath coverage.
That was a great concept.
Yeah.
There's a perfect example. I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
But that was a great concept because, as I recall, they were in a 3-by-1 set, and they actually bracketed both number 3 to trips, and they played over the top. Was that Gallup? Who's the X?
That was Gallup
was the
again.
X. So what they did is they had the safety, I think it was Epps, clearly rotate over the top of Gallup.
Right.
And that allowed Slade to undercut the route. So that was a schemed concept.
thing,
Sure.
That was a schemed play.
There you go.
Maybe a different quarterback doesn't throw that ball.
Right.
We don't know that.
Right.
We don't, so there's another example where I love the scheme,
Yeah.
but we don't know, does Dak Prescott not throw that ball?
Correct.
Right.
We don't know that.
But if you look at their schedule, right?
Yeah.
Jeff, if you look at their schedule, they got a rookie quarterback today. Davis Mills on Thursday in Houston.
Yeah.
The guy's not putting up big numbers. Then Taylor Heineke is filling in for Wentz.
Right.
Oh, and another
And then maybe
inexperienced
Sam
Ellinger.
Ellinger.
Right,
No,
right.
It is Ellinger. And then, of course, Rodgers.
if he's still playing there.
Yeah, well,
You get hurt.
what else could happen?
You got to call back
it-
to Ryan.
Right.
I mean, when you look at their schedule, it really sets up. It really does set up pretty well for them to force turnover.
All right, before we get to the break then, let me ask you guys this. Real quick answers. What's more sustainable, their extraordinarily high takeaway rate or their extraordinarily low turnover rate or giveaway rate?
Offensively.
That's more sustainable? I would
because,
agree.
I would agree 1,000%.
All right, I think we all agree on that. Great. That's very rare. How about that? We all
But
agree.
Hurts is great with the football.
Hurts
He doesn't
even
turn
last
it over.
year,
Yeah.
when we thought there were issues that Hurts had, which we clearly had a year ago,
Right.
And flare up every once in a while this year. He didn't turn the ball over a lot.
Right.
2 guys that
Do remember, though, the Eagles have not lost a fumble.
Miles
That's-
Sanders and Dallas Goedert. Both those guys hold the ball pretty loose.
Yeah.
Dallas Goedert is due for not to be negative, but he holds the ball really, really loose.
Yeah, he does.
But with Sanders, though, have you noticed anything?
He's just more cognizant of it. And I think that's because Jalen Hurts is his quarterback. And I think that's one of those things that when you have an Alabama guy that they preach it and then you live by it and you understand the demand that he asks for from his players, I just think that's one of those things that helps out.
All right, another thing we all agree on, it's time to take a break. Split-second break to hear from our great friends here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook.
Game night for me is every night. At the place where I meet up with the guys, grab a cold one, and watch the big game on the big screen. So whether it's the money line, the pass line, or a parlay, I'm in it to win. This is my city, and this is my place.
All right. Big thanks to our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook and our host here at Jack's Bar and Grill. They do a great job giving us a great setup. We really thank them. Hour 2 of Inside the Birds Pregame Live is here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook. We got people coming in. Adam Caplan saw somebody wearing a what jersey today?
Sam Bradford Rams jersey. Every week I come here to Rivers, there's some old school jersey. We saw the Bobby Hoeing number 14 several weeks ago. And you can always tell how old it is because it had the Reebok patch.
Oh, yeah.
That's when Reebok had the contract.
Now, was
So
the guy
that's
wearing
funny.
the Bradford jersey also wearing the sleeves underneath?
Oh, no, same as Liz. No, that's funny.
And did he go down when you came next to him?
Oh, that's not right.
That's a low blow,
That's
Jason
not
Avant,
right.
but I like it. We'll accept that. All right, the Eagles are favored for the 7th time in 7 games. If you go to the
Wow.
Bet Rivers app, they are 10.5-point favorites. You can go to the Bet Rivers app and play that if you want, or you can come here to the great sports book and then watch the game after you place your wager. All right, the Eagles are coming out of a bye. So, Jay, I want to ask you this. You said on the podcast with Quentin Michael, the Q&A podcast on the Inside the Birds platform, that coaches like to do some adjustments during the bye. They self-scout, they tweak, they get the analytics involved. What are we doing? That's maybe telegraphic. What can we do? So give us an idea of how that mindset from the coaches impacts the players coming out of the bye.
It just puts your players in position to win more because you're starting to realize in 2022 is a different offense than 2021. You're also looking around the league and seeing what plays that are showing up consistently that you're having success with as well. So you can have that double confirmation on, okay, we're having success with it. Other teams are, we need to do this a little bit more. Let's get to it from multiple formations. Also, which players are having better matchups and who's playing well. Let's increase their snaps. Those types of things. So I think it just puts you in position to win going forward because you don't always have time to make the adjustments that you want middle of the season. But I think going forward, you give yourself, especially offensively, I can't speak to always defense, but especially offensively, you start to see some of those plays that have been successful come up a lot more often.
So is that something Andy Reid, who is the best statistical coach coming out of the bye in the history of the sport, was big on kind of tweaking some things, or was it just the rest that made you guys?
It was rest, but it was also the tweaks. Like you started to realize, hey, this guy needs more snaps. He's when he's rushing the passer, he's hitting the quarterback. Let's give him more snaps, and you start to just evaluate yourself because you already have a predetermined look, and you're worrying about the next opponent and the opponent that you're playing this week. So there's a lot of adjustments that are happening. I think that's what makes the team most successful. It's you realizing who you are, not what you think you are.
I think offensively too, teams have tendencies obviously, and so let's say in a certain formation you like to run a certain route concept. Well, defenses start to know that.
Yeah.
So you're not going to give up your route concepts and combinations because there's not 1,000 of them. Everybody runs essentially the same stuff.
Right.
So you might say, hey, you self-scout and say, you know what, we're running this particular combination from this formation an awful lot. So let's now change the formation. Maybe we change the personnel package. We'll run the same concept, but we're just going to change how we get to it.
Right.
So John DeFilippo, the former Eagles quarterbacks coach, came on our show and he said, this is what we would do coming out of the self-scout. So John was in charge of the red zone. So he said, listen, if we're 70% of the time throwing to Ertz, let's get the other guy involved. Let's get the other tight end involved. Or let's get the other receiver involved. Because if they see you doing the same thing regularly, when you come out of the bye, they're going to think you're going to do that. That's what Greg was saying.
Yeah.
Let's change it up a little bit.
Who here has been to Pittsburgh? Ever spent any time in Pittsburgh?
In my life, yes.
Yeah.
Ever the Turnpike.
Ever hear a guy just say, "How yins doing?" They say yins in Pittsburgh.
Yinzer.
Here we say yous. How yous doing? There they say yins.
Y-O-U-Z-E, yes.
All right, it's yins versus yous today at Lincoln Financial Field. Now,
Literally.
Here's an interesting
Underrated
stat.
city, though.
What's that?
Underrated
I
city.
agree.
I totally agree with you.
Underrated.
Because everything you hear about Pittsburgh growing up
No,
here
it's
is
a
that
really nice
the
city.
dark clouds and all the mills.
no.
No, it's not
Yeah,
like that. It's a really
beautiful
nice city.
city.
It's
It is a
beautiful. The
beautiful
Roberto
city.
Clemente
The
Bridge is
water
beautiful.
and
No
Yeah.
water in the river.
Roberto
I've been
Clemente
on the bridge.
Bridge,
I've been on the bridge.
Mount Washington, as they
It's a
say out
great
there.
city,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is a great city. You might be surprised to know, though, that throughout the Steelers' history, and they have been a great franchise, right? They have not won in Philadelphia since 1965. They have never won at the Link. They've only been here twice, but they've never even scored a touchdown at the Link. This is the great Steelers that we always talk about.
And they were terrible in 1965.
They were terrible in the 60s.
Because they were
That's
so
ironic,
good.
right? They won when they were terrible, and they haven't won
They
since.
had bad
It's
uniforms,
every
too, back
8
then.
years, too.
I like their uniforms.
Back then, yeah. They were.
I even like the old school uniform. All right, well, maybe that's just me. But yeah,
It
9
is.
straight losses here in the city of Philadelphia. But I want to get back to coming out of the bye, because there's one thing that we talked about with the Eagles and what you guys just mentioned about certain tweaks that you can make. I think it's fair to say over the last few games for the Eagles, their shot play, their deep threat has not been there the way it was in the first 2 or 3 weeks. In fact, after the first 3 games, Jalen Hurts was leading the NFL with an average of 9.34 yards per attempt, which was a little bit unsustainable because that's an extraordinarily high mark. For perspective, right now, Tua Tagovailoa leads the NFL at 8.6 yards. So at one point, Jalen Hurts was way above that. But since then, Hurts is averaging just 7 yards per attempt, which if you look at NFL quarterbacks right now for the season, averaging 7 yards per attempt, you get Matthew Stafford at 18th overall. So obviously, there's been a major drop-off. Jason, I know some regression was inevitable after 3 weeks because that number of 9.34 was staggeringly high. But do you feel like they have to kind of get back to refinding the shot play in their offense?
I believe that they have to be intentional.
Okay.
They are not being intentional about shots.
Meaning they need to go in with a scripted, a couple of plays where we're going to get
exactly.
Get deep.
That's
okay.
the way that those plays get manufactured. Yeah, you may have some success with him reading it out and going deep, but again, that's not sustainable as you look at the 6 games, right? Of him reading it out and getting to the shot play. No, let's make sure that hey, we want to go deep at least twice a quarter,
right?
Or whatever plan that you have going in. When you have A.J. Brown, you got to give him a chance down the field. And also, even when you throw the ball down the field, you back up the defense, your chance of getting pass interference. I don't understand why teams want to be perfect the entire game because that's what you're telling yourself you have to do. When you don't get big plays and shot plays, you have to be perfect football team the entire time. Offensively, in the second half, we haven't been. You can have long, sustaining drives, 15, 16-play drives. That's great. But you can't continually do that the entire game and the entire season. It's just too hard.
Do you think they have been so careful with the football and not turned it over and they've run the ball so well? Do you think they've sort of gotten subconsciously into a careful mindset with the ball and not therefore wanting to do that?
Well, we like to run the ball, and we can run the ball on anyone, and that's a part of it. When you have a team that's averaging over 30 attempts per game when it comes to rushing a football, it's hard to get those opportunities unless you're being intentional. So I think that there's one-on-one opportunities. When you get those one-on-one opportunities, well, maybe we need to check into it even though, we have something else called.
Greg, to Jason's point about being intentional, I know there have been some times where you've said, Jalen Hurts admitted this himself. He said, we've left some meat on the bone in our passing offense. Are you seeing plays where they could have gone deep or stressed the team and the ball never went there?
I always think that's an easy thing to say, for a quarterback. I think what Jay is saying, I would agree with that 100%. Because shot plays are proactive plays. You call them on 1st and 10, you call them on 2nd and 3, you call them when the down and distance is favorable, and I think that's what you mean by being intentional. That's when you call those plays. You don't expect necessarily when it's 3rd and 9 to hit 30-yard completions.
Right.
The defense has usually a tactical advantage when it's 3rd and 9. So you have to come out and you have to be proactive in attacking with the pass game. Now, the other thing is this team has started to run the ball. They run the ball well. We've seen what they've done in the fourth quarters of their last 2 games where they've had 2 long game-sealing drives. One drive was 17 plays, 13 called runs. The other drive was 13 plays, 9 called runs.
Right.
So I think they're playing, and this is cliched but true, they get ahead, their defense is playing really well, and then they're playing to win that given game.
Right.
The question is, at some point, you would think, Adam just went through all these quarterbacks, they're playing, it may not be like this, but you would think at some point, if you want to truly, if you're playing the Bills or the Chiefs, and we wouldn't see them, I guess, till the Super Bowl, I guess, if that would occur. But teams like that, you need to be far more intentional with trying to orchestrate and manufacture big explosive pass plays.
To both of your guys' points, they have such an effective run game that should be able to set up some opportunities to drive the ball down the field on maybe running down, obvious
right,
rundowns.
well, it sets it up not just because the way people think in terms, you fake a handoff and everybody's going to jump forward.
The defensive,
that's not the way it works.
Right.
It works based on your personnel, your formations. There's a misconception about play action. This has been studied for years. There is no correlation between running the ball and play action.
Right.
People assume that. But these studies have been done. There's zero correlation. I'm telling you, people are probably listening going, oh, no, you got to run. There's zero, defensive guys don't go in the huddle in the third quarter and say in the huddle, hey, they only have 9 yards rushing on 8 carries. We don't have to worry about the run.
Right.
No one thinks like that.
Right.
They're reacting to keys. Okay, so it doesn't matter. I had this conversation once with Dallas Clark. I think he was in our boot camp talking about the play action of the Colts, because Manning was so good, with showing the ball. And we had this conversation that it has nothing to do with running the ball. It's you can run play action on the first play of the game and it can be successful. If you're a running football team, you do not have to establish the run. The run's been established with the other team's game planning all week long.
Sure.
The Dallas Cowboys in the 90s did not have to establish Emmitt Smith on any given Sunday.
Right.
That's already been established.
Right.
So there's no correlation. What it comes down to is, what personnel grouping do you line up in? What then, based on your film study, when you line up in that personnel grouping on 1st and 10, will the defense be in? You're going to get more predictable fronts and more predictable coverages that you can attack.
Right. So maybe an opportunity to make it a better point. Let's say first down, you come out in 12 personnel, you got 2 tight ends.
Right.
The defense thinks, well, there's an opportunity to run, but you also have Devontae Smith or AJ.
Based on film study that if you line up in 12 personnel and both tight ends are attached, let's say, to the formation, and you have an X and a Z, from film study the defense is likely to play whatever it is they're going to play.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you can attack.
Yeah, I agree with that. And here's a way that you can get to it. Anytime that you want. When you look out there and you see a favorable matchup and there is a one-on-one, there are some teams that do this. That was me in college and Braylon Edwards in college and also Larry Fitzgerald and other guys. You put a one-on-one situation out there with your guys, the quarterback and the receiver has the ability to get into that play.
Right.
And how many times were we yelling at the television a couple years ago with Jalen Reagor getting so many down the field throws that were just thrown out of bounds or just being incomplete? Like, I would rather be yelling at the TV, right now with A.J. Brown, with his opportunity, I think he'll make one of those.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So, Adam, real quick. I know you've been talking to people around the league during the bye week about the Eagles and what they're seeing. Specifically with the passing game, what has been the feedback that you are commonly getting?
It's sort of a simplistic offense, but it's schemed up really, really well. They're still RPO driven. We know that. They think the personnel going from last year to this year, it's like night and day, which we all knew. It's just better.
Right.
And they have the best offensive line in football. I actually ask that question a lot. I don't ask people to grade them, but when you see other teams, what do you think Philly's right up there? Oh, they're the best.
There you go.
Just about everyone. They always say that. Oh, yeah, Philly's got the best offensive line. They don't mention Stoutland, though. They just go, Lane Johnson's the best tackle in football, not just the best
Lane
left.
Johnson is ridiculously good.
People think he's the best tackle in football, by the way.
I'm not surprised by that. I'm not studying, offensive tackles in detail, but he is so good.
All right, we're going to talk about maybe somebody who can help this deep
about the
offense.
Steelers D, by the way.
We will get into that too.
But
first, we need some refreshment first, so we're going to welcome in Christina is going to be here to deliver us some drinks, some water. And is that coffee too?
It's black coffee.
Good. God bless you. I'll take it.
I can't.
No, too much.
Thank you so much.
I can't drink caffeine.
Christina wearing the Reggie Brown jersey today. No,
Reggie Brown. It's Reggie Brown.
I was trying.
The best feet I've ever seen.
The best feet?
So much.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Reggie Brown had amazing
He did have some good feet. That's true. I remember
He's the only receiver that would go
Thank you,
around
Christina.
5 miles before a game.
Where did he go to school, Reggie? Was it Florida?
Georgia. Oh, yeah. He was Georgia to the bone.
He had, talking about a great athlete.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Really?
A great athlete.
He was supposed to be the replacement for Terrell Owens.
Super quick, feet amazing, just couldn't catch it that well. But everything else is great.
Everything else is great, just couldn't catch very well.
Well, as a receiver, the catching part's
I think it's important.
But let me tell you this, it all depends on who's there. You gave him Jeff Garcia, he got a contract extension.
Right.
Because Jeff Garcia threw a pillow out there.
I remember sitting at the Combine one year with a coach who I knew very well, coaching the league for almost 40 years. And I forget what quarterback we were talking about, but we were sitting in P.F. Chang's having dinner at the Combine. And, so we were sitting, and there was somebody maybe sitting like where Jeff is. And he said about the quarterback, if he threw it to Jeff, he couldn't break his nose.
That's a feather he threw.
Talking about Kurt Warner. Right. Kurt Warner couldn't throw the ball hard at all.
You got it there.
All right, well, big thanks again to Christina from Jack's Bar and Grill here for the special delivery. And the manager of Jack's Bar and Grill is Joe. We give him a big thumbs up. Thanks, Joe. Let's get back to that discussion about the Eagles offense and how to awaken or reawaken the downfield presence. Adam had a great stat during the bye week when we were talking about things that might be able to change. And he brought up Quez Watkins, who last year had 43 catches for 647 yards and averaged 15 yards a catch, which was number one on the Eagles. Number one this year. 6 catches, 88 yards. He is on pace for 17 catches and 249 yards.
Season?
9 targets the entire year.
9
So he's
targets.
had 9 targets in 6 games?
And 6
Yes.
games.
That's
9
a problem.
targets.
He is
That's
There
a
we go.
Scout change. That's,
Segment
that's
over.
A correction.
That's a problem.
And he's still averaging 15 yards. It's 14.7, but 15
He
yards.
is, right. So not much has changed his ability to stretch the field. What changes his ability to get the ball. Is
has-
this
he has
the
a
guy
touchdown,
that's
too.
got to that they need to figure out during the bye week
Well,
how
That's
to
a
more
self-scout
involve?
change,
Yeah.
yes.
Go ahead.
Well, this change won't happen.
Oh, okay.
Let me tell you why it won't happen. I think it should happen, but I don't think it won't. Because when you talk about a team that prides themselves in establishing the run, you don't have the opportunities in the passing game. Jalen Hurts, 25, 26, 27 attempts a game, and you have to get these guys the ball. Dallas Goedert is a nightmare matchup. A.J. Brown's a nightmare matchup. Devontae Smith's a nightmare matchup. So when you consider that, that's already, you give those guys the targets they need. That's already, 8 times 3. Right there.
The
That's
one
like
thing I would
24
say, though,
targets
the
there.
one thing I'd say on that, Jay, is this. When you look at this situation, they're coming out throwing in most games, right? So the pass attempt number's high, and then they get this big lead. They're not throwing the second half. So basically what they got to do, if you want Quez Watkins to get the ball, it's going to have to be in the first half.
Yeah,
They're just not throwing the second because they're up big.
Yeah, I like throwing it. I do. I like throwing the ball. I think that this team likes to run the ball because it's like their bread and butter, and it feeds with Jalen Hurts and all those things. O-line's telling them to do it, by the way. Let me tell you what's happening. Run the ball to every lineman everywhere. Like, run the
Yeah, I've
football.
never, has an O-line ever said throw the ball once, even once?
Run the
We asked
football.
Trey that, he said never.
So every O-line wants to beat up the defensive lineman. So
Right.
I just think that there's just not enough footballs to go around.
Yeah, all right, but I think about some of the Bills' offense or the Chiefs' offense where they have a guy
Hold
like
on.
a Mecole Hardman who could disappear.
Yeah.
No, just hear me out here.
All right.
They have guys who can kind of appear and disappear, but every once in a while they get, like Mecole had 3 touchdowns last
Yeah.
week. Sometimes he'll go 5 weeks without 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Same thing that you might see from either Isaiah McKenzie or I'm trying to think who else in the Bills offense. There's another guy, Khalil Shakir's a rookie. They're trying to work him in a little bit. But, isn't there an opportunity for 2 shots a game to Quez Watkins that can help you? Because this is an offense that, especially in the second half, is sort of kind of trying to find its way.
You want me to go here?
I would love you to go
Can
here.
I say my go?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Quarterback. Jalen Hurts is growing and has become a really good player in this league. Getting to the 3rd and 4th guy and knowing when you have a great matchup and recognizing that's the upper echelon, the top 3, top 4. And
Right.
you just named top 2.
Yeah.
And those are more, and again, it's always hard to say this kind of stuff, and I always try to think, as Adam knows, this is sort of how I try to build my career, how to say this stuff clearly and concisely. And I don't want it to come out wrong, but I would say that the Eagles' offense, and Adam kind of just hit on it, I would never use the word simple because nothing in the NFL is simple.
Right.
I think the Eagles' offense is highly schemed.
I got that.
Okay?
Right.
I think the Bills and Chiefs offense are far more expansive in their concepts, just as a general principle. Now, all those concepts would still be in the Eagles' playbook because every coach has a playbook. Would you agree with what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm A-manning over here.
Okay. I mean, every coach has, a big playbook. So it's not that those concepts and schematics aren't in an Eagles playbook, but I think that Jay hit it right on the head. Jalen Hurts is a young quarterback who played at Oklahoma in what was a highly schemed and relatively simple college offense.
Sure.
And now he's learning in the NFL.
Right.
And the Eagles have done absolutely the right thing, getting a ton of weapons. They run the ball extremely well. Their defense this year is playing at a very high level. They're not giving up a lot of points, and they're getting turnovers. So the offense can play within a certain containment.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now, they may be able to play this way all year, based on the opponents that they're playing with the quarterback.
Yep.
But if they get into a game where they would have to score 30, 35, like when you envision the Chiefs playing the Bills, you know you're going to get two quarterbacks and two offenses that have expansive concepts that the quarterbacks and the receivers can execute at a high level.
Yes.
I don't think the Eagles' offense is at that point from a pass game
There's less
perspective.
freelance involved, especially in the passing
Well, I'm not
game.
talking about running around.
No. I mean,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
from in second reaction passing plays, you'll see from
right,
both
but
those
Jalen
quarterbacks.
can do that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the schematics of the offense.
Gotcha.
Those
the
guys
coach-
are given more to
the
do.
Coaches being able to get to more things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did I
All
make
that,
sense
yeah,
there?
no,
Yeah,
yeah,
I get it.
100%.
I
The
got
coaches
you.
being
But
able to get
so
more.
doesn't this go back to intent then, Adam? Like, isn't there room to say, all right, we're going to come out first down, 13 personnel. They got 4 tight ends on the 53 now, but only have Quez Watkins as our outside guy, and now you're sort of
You want to isolate them?
Yeah, I mean, you're taking A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith off the field once or twice a game just to try to
Of course.
see if you can get that.
They know they have to. It's funny, a lot of the comments we got on the message board on YouTube and emails from our Patreon subscribers, they all brought up Quez Watkins like they're seeing it. We all see it.
Right.
The guy is super explosive. I know he's not a high target guy, but yes, I agree with your assessment because when you start loosening things up downfield, when they know you have to cover the entire field, because they got everything else. They got one of the most athletic tight ends in football, could block as well too. A.J. Brown's a stud. Devontae Smith
is
really good, who
Yeah.
could also go deep.
Yeah.
Let's bring the only thing missing to me on this offense is the shot play, because the thing that they're giving Hurts now, which they wouldn't give him last year, is you're letting him throw the ball coming out in each game, except for I think
But
one.
it's also the nature of the throws. Don't forget, you can throw the ball a lot.
They're
but
letting
it's
him do it. They weren't last year.
Yeah.
But it's the nature of the
They
throws.
don't come out throwing the ball 30
They
yards.
give
at it.
him.
Yeah.
There's different ways to throw the ball. You can jump
Sure.
in here too. I mean, they're not coming out and saying, "Let's start tossing it 25 yards down air yards,
Right.
making tough, big
right.
ball throws
They-
in
they
tight
build
windows."
toward it,
That's
yeah.
not what they're asking.
No, but
they're measured.
That's a
Right,
great word.
but the
Yeah,
Washington
it's a great
game,
word.
they threw the ball downfield, and they did
yeah.
it heavy in the first half.
Right.
Yeah.
They can do that, and we know that they're capable of doing that.
Yeah.
I'll say this: it's hard, very hard, if you're Quez Watkins to be in the right mental space, knowing that you're playing football games and that you're going to get less than one target a game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or one target.
Yeah,
or
you're asking
less
this guy
a
to
game.
be dynamic through every
it's very
route.
hard to practice that way and stay in the game, stay mentally invested. It's
Right.
hard. I know what it's like to go an entire game and you don't get a pass, and then Jason is 4th and 7. We need to get this first down. Like, yo, it's a hard mental space to be in, and he has to be mature to be able to handle
Great
this.
point.
Next week when we do our show, I'm going to go 45 minutes before I even talk to Jason, just to remind him about what that kind of was like.
No, but that's a great point. It's hard. It's human nature.
We're going to get to sort of the construct of the Steelers defense and whether they can execute more shot today in a second. But I do want to ask about, Carl Stevenson, one of our Patreon subscribers, asked a really good question too. Is there more opportunity? And there's one football. I get it. But we're kind of on the subject of things you can do differently coming out of the bye. Miles Sanders has done a very good job this year of catching the ball when thrown to him. Now, again, he's not running a whole lot of routes, but he has shown the ability to catch the ball. If you go back to his rookie year under Doug Peterson, he was making plays down the field several times. Is there, in your guys' mind, an opportunity to sort of unlock him a little bit more in your intermediary passing game as a weapon?
I'll say I've been around Miles, and Miles has good hands. They're not great, and I think that he struggles mentally sometimes. But I think that he can be a guy that you can scheme up down the field. That goes with, again, evolution of being able to trust the quarterback more and all those things that we just talked about. Like when you started getting running backs down the field and flanking them out wide, your offense is expanding.
Sure.
And I think that we have created our identity already, and we haven't deviated from that. And I don't necessarily know if it's something that we will see this year. Can it be done? Yes. I believe Gainwell's a great receiver that we can use out of the backfield.
Yeah, they've tried. They've tried with him.
Not a lot.
Not a ton.
This year they're down. He's way down.
He's way down.
Yeah, in comparison, so I think that you can use these guys in a bunch of different ways.
Sure.
Do we do that and go away from what's been working?
Fair point. By the way, my favorite part of the show is when I ask a question to those guys, and I know that the answer is probably not going to be overwhelmingly positive and maybe skeptical. That's when they do this. They look at each other like, who's going to answer? Who's answering this one?
I don't care that. You want to go first?
You get it first. If I said, hey guys, how great is A.J. Brown? You guys are like having a fight to the
that we would all agree on.
Yeah, no, it's really funny stuff. All right, we'll see. We'll see what they do offensively this week as they come out of the bye. We want you to remind you to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan, that is their motto. So make sure you're checking them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.
Got the inactives. No surprises. Ian Book, there are only 5. Ian Book, Josh Jobe, who had the shoulder injury.
Yep.
But he was available if they wanted him to play. Reed Blankenship, Trey Sermon again, and Josh Sills.
Wow, Trey Sermon still struggling to get on the
after
play. After two carries,
yeah. Who get the 2 carries?
Yeah.
But 4 running backs, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So by the way, we didn't mention this. Tyree Jackson was activated. Is he active today?
No. He's
in the 21-day window.
Yeah, he's just starting to work back. But there's another guy who's interesting, man.
Yeah.
Jeff and I were at Eagles Dolphins practices, and we saw him run straight up and down. We're like, okay. The thing you notice is how big he was, right?
Tyree Jackson and I don't know if it's when you injure your knee, you spend more time with
I met him. I spent time with him.
When we saw him in Miami for the joint practice, just walking out, he looked enormous.
He actually came to Films and watched tape with me. We watched.
When was this?
Before training camp.
Okay, cool.
We watched Travis Kelce, Darren Waller.
Nice.
It was great.
Nice. Did you
He's a really
could you
smart
tell
kid.
like he looked a little bit bigger up top and
I didn't see him.
You weren't
before.
sitting there measuring his arms?
No, I didn't have my tape measure measuring his biceps. No.
No, but he looked big.
Really? You don't look like that type of guy that would do that.
You're not Chip Kelly? You're not Chip Kelly out there measuring wrists and knees and all right. Well, next time you get the opportunity, Greg, I'm sure he won't mind. Just poke him in private a little bit.
I didn't say how those pecs doing. I didn't ask him,
He didn't go, why are you asking me this question?
Eddie Murphy. It's like Eddie Murphy in the movie. Look at his biceps. Guys don't
He
do
may
that.
not accept that second invitation back there.
Look at the shoulders.
All right, getting back to the Eagles offense versus the Steelers defense. Obviously, you should always you take what the defense gives. That's normally a game plan. The Steelers alternate between cover 2 and cover 3. Is that a fair kind of their predominant
They
looks
play
on
a lot
defense?
more cover 2 this year than they've played in recent years.
Yeah.
And they try to do it with disguise and late rotation, which is what a lot of teams are now doing because cover 2 can be very static depending on teams play it.
Right.
So the teams that are playing it more are getting to it with a lot of disguise and late rotation with different middle hole defenders so that it's not the same guy, so the offense doesn't know pre-snap, hey, we're anticipating cover 2, it's going to be this guy in the middle hole.
Sure.
That's pretty weird. It's pretty funky and weird when you're looking at it.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
So they're playing a lot more cover 2. They play a lot of cover 1 robber, too, because Fitzpatrick may be the best robber safety in the NFL.
Right.
He's got a great feel. He sees routes extremely well. I bet he's a guy that if you were talking to him, he could tell you based on receiver splits exactly what's coming. This just strikes me as that guy. Would you agree?
100%. One of the best in the league.
Yeah.
One of the best.
So a robber safety can kind of come down and
A
give a
robber
second.
means, let's say you're starting with a 2-shell look, a split safety look, which is what most teams do when they play robber because they don't want to give it away.
Right.
And then Fitzpatrick, when the ball snapped, he would come down into the middle, maybe 12 yards, give or take.
Yeah, it depends on the guy.
Yeah, depends on the guy.
And the corners will shift, or if the good ones,
They'll
shift
funnel.
out.
Yeah.
They'll shift to go outside leverage and make everyone go toward him.
Right.
You so the quarterback is always man to man.
Right.
And because I saw 2 safeties, and they outside got this throw. Good interception, Patrick.
Right.
So it sounds like that type of defense might make it difficult for Jalen Hurts to get the ball to Dallas Goedert, but maybe on the outsides a little bit, or that single safety look.
Then it becomes situational. They're not going to play that on every snap.
Of course.
Right. So then it's situational. I mean, Goddard could have 8 catches and they could all come in other situations.
He gets 5 screens, which they've done
exactly.
well.
And remember, he's on the post most of the time anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not. That's a change up for them when they have him down. But yes, can Goddard beat Terrell Edmonds? Yes.
Yeah. And Edmonds is their when they do play cover 1, normal cover 1, not cover 1 robber is different because if they play it out of dime, because they play both nickel and dime.
Right.
So if they're going to play nickel and play cover 1, Edmonds is predominantly the tight end matchup.
Gotcha.
If they're going to play some form of robber out of dime, Norwood, who's their dime safety, ends up being the tight end matchup. He's a second-year player out of Oklahoma who's kind of a really interesting player.
Okay. Well, why have the Steelers allowed the 3rd most passing touchdowns and also have the 2nd worst yards per air or air yards against them in the league?
There's a couple of reasons for that.
Josh Allen's one of them. No.
Well,
that was one very bad game.
first thing is they can't rush the pass. And
no TJ Watt.
Yeah, there's no TJ Watt. You got Alex Highsmith, who's the guy that's giving them some production. But when it comes to just pure rushing the passer, they don't get there.
Right.
And so guys have forever to throw. And this is the National Football League. You give a quarterback a lot of time, they're going to make a play.
Right.
And that's what's happening.
They also have issues at linebacker. Just to show you what the issues are at linebacker, when they play dime, Robert Spillane is their dime linebacker. They drafted Devin Bush, who I'm sure you're familiar with, out of Michigan, and as a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
Devin Bush, and this is all tape study.
Right.
Devin Bush is an explosive athlete, and the college game is putting out a ton of explosive athlete linebackers because the college game demands that because of the wide hash marks, and you have to be able to run. But Devin Bush, as far as feel for the passing game in the NFL, is probably bottom 3rd in the NFL. In fact, he only plays in their nickel if it's 1st or 2nd down. If they're going to play nickel in what's truly a passing he's not on the field, and he never plays in dime. His instincts as a pass defender, particularly in zone, this is all tape now, are really bad.
Right.
They know that, and that's why he's not on the field.
Yep.
What school did he go to, by the way?
And by the way,
Mason
he
Blue.
played really well in college. Yeah. But again, he was never in the situations where he had to cover people.
Right.
Sure.
He was always down and
was
he
a
was
runner.
running sideline to sideline. He had big guys in front of him.
Right.
And by the way, Miles Jack is not so great either when it comes
That's why
to
he's
what I
moved
just
around.
spoke about. He's not real good at that either.
Yeah.
So their linebackers are a problem in pass coverage.
Now, I know they were hoping, and they feel like they've made a little progress in there, not enough, but that the addition of Robert Flores as their linebackers coach or assistant.
Brian Flores.
I'm sorry, what did I say? Robert Flores?
Yeah.
Ryan.
Oh, he's a great commentator for ESPN. He's
Yeah, I
helping
know,
out.
yeah.
No, Brian Flores would help in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I'm really curious. It's hard to make really meaningful changes during the course of the season. I think, to me, and again, I'm not there, and coaches know more than I do, but I'm curious to see if they make some significant conceptual adjustments with their defense in the offseason.
All right. I want to tell you about our friends at Public Square and Rebel Hill. They are back. The team of James and Zach are back behind controls, bringing Inside the Birds to you in high definition with great graphics, videos, and more. Make sure you contact Public Square Media and Rebel Hill Productions to produce your webcast, podcast, live show, anything else you can dream of. This team can bring it to life. Adam and I talk about it all the time. We are nothing without the great quality production of this show and our other Inside the Birds productions that Rebel Hill and Public Square are involved with. So we thank them. And if you're looking to do what we do and you have great content, you got to be able to brand it, you got to be able to promote it and put it out there visually. And that's why you need Public Square and Rebel Hill. Give them a call.
Can I say one more thing about the defense? Because I
definitely.
don't want to make it seem like we were ganging up. I mean, I'm just telling you what tape shows.
Oh, sure,
They've also had a revolving door at corner due to injuries.
Right.
Levi Wallace going down.
And he's out today. Witherspoon's been out for 4 weeks. He's back. James Pierre, number 42, who they don't want to be a starter. He's been there for 3-4 years, has had to start a lot of games. Clearly, they don't see him that way, but he's had to play. So they've also had a lot.
Sutton's playing.
Yeah, Sutton has played
He's
inside, outside.
He's been a dime.
The guy who's actually
nickel
played
before.
really well is Millette, the slot.
Arthur
He's probably
Millette,
their best
yeah.
corner.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, they've had a lot of revolving door at corner as well, which may be one reason they're playing more cover 2 this year.
Right, and to your point on not piling up, they have third most interceptions in the NFL. They have 8 interceptions, so they've been opportunistic, and also quarterbacks are only completing 60% of passes against them, which is not very high. It's they're one of the better in that category. And the QB rating against them is lower than 87, so they're doing some things well. They're in the top or the middle part of the league in some of those categories.
They're giving up a ton of production to receivers. They're amongst the worst in the league, but they've got very little to tight end. So if you're going to win, your receivers are probably going to get the ball today.
Jay, how do you attack their defense today with what you got?
If you're going to play cover 2, it's a bunch of different ways, but you high-low the middle runner. That's what you do.
Right.
You create matchups outside where there's concept that takes the safety out and you bring a guy underneath them. But mostly you got to be able to run the football, and that's what's going to dictate the game today. If they're going to play cover 2 defense, you got to be able to punish it.
No doubt about it.
And see, one way I think about it from a truly tactical perspective, and I hope people can visualize this. If you line up in a 2-by-2 set, and you're anticipating cover 2, let's say it's 3rd and 7 or whatever, and you're anticipating cover 2, line up in a 2-by-2 set. Okay, Goddard would be the inside to one side.
Right.
All right. That would normally be to the boundary side, because what will happen in cover 2 if you have 2 receivers to the field, wide receivers, the middle hole defender almost always opens to the field or to speed. So if speed and the field are the same side, the middle hole defender will open to that side.
100%.
Right. And then you can get the wide receiver on the boundary side. Then you can basically high-low the underneath defender to the boundary side, because he can't play both. So you can high-low him. You can run digs, because the middle hole defender, his back is going to be turned to the boundary side.
You know what always bothered me? Every team knows that.
You know exactly what I'm saying.
That in a 2-by-2 set, right? 2 receivers to the field, the middle runner, the linebacker, or whoever that is going to run to the speed side.
Right.
You can actually just run a seam right behind them. Nobody ever does it, and it bothers me, because the other inside guy, which would be Goddard, if you run a seam right up behind that guy as he's looking, he can't turn around. And I've always said, like, why don't we do this? It's just.
But you can run that high-low with a dig ball from the other side
too,
and you can
get it.
Yeah,
as well.
you can get that. Yeah,
Sure. Now you guys we've talked about the running game that the Eagles have, which has been fantastic all year long. And maybe what's the most remarkable thing about the Steelers' run defense is that it's pretty unremarkable given the history of the franchise. Now, linebacker play,
it's a little better this year than last year.
Yeah.
When they were the worst
last year they were the worst. Right.
Yeah.
They were
It
terrible.
drove Mike Tomlin crazy. I mean, he got sick of being asked about it every week. And they're better. Well, of course, Cam Hayward's a stud still.
Yeah, I mean, you look at how that impacts their overall defense. I mean, they are 22nd in points per game. They allow almost 400 yards per game, which is 4th worst in the NFL. Third downs, they're 23rd. The only thing that they're decent at is red zone, which they are a top 10 team. But everything else, rushing yards allowed, pass yards allowed, sacks, they are middle to bottom 3rd in the league. Although, Craig, I want to ask you, the last 2 weeks, they've kept the points off the board a lot better. Is that something they're doing?
They
their
had 3
opponent?
Interceptions last week against Tua.
Right.
I watched that tape. You probably watched that tape too.
Yeah.
They should have 3 interceptions against Tua.
Yeah.
I thought they actually, after the first series or 2 against Miami, I thought they played really, really well overall. I'm always amazed, and I know it's not easy, so I'm not saying like it should happen easily, but I'm always amazed when a team does something really well, and you obviously studied it on film all week, and they come out on the first 2 series, and that team does exactly what they do well against the defense, and you just, like, you'd be prepared that you've just studied that all week.
Right.
Because that's what happened with Miami against Pittsburgh.
Sure.
First 2 series, Miami does what Miami does, and it was like, didn't the Steelers just study this whole week?
Yes.
But I know it's not that easy. I'm not making it sound like if I was coaching, wouldn't, that's a joke. I couldn't do that. Of course not. But I mean, it just always strikes me as kind of weird.
Sure. No, I get it.
With the design of the Steelers defense, especially with the cover 2, just on the back end, the design of it is to make you play a methodical game and eliminate big plays. Right. So even with Miami in their first 2 series, it wasn't necessarily a big play down the field. It was catching runs, things of that nature. So will the Eagles be a better team at playing the slow game? I think we have done that, well throughout most of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the other thing. We're not the same offense against the blitz as we are when we're not blitz.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
This team is one of the lowest blitz percentage teams in the National Football League at like 22% or something like that.
Right.
Are they going to ratchet that up?
Well, that's what
Against
kind of
our
to Greg's
team,
point.
and
You
those
watch
are the
them and you
things
see that they throw short, throw screen against the blitz, and you don't blitz a lot. Maybe you come out and do something you ordinarily don't do to dictate what they do.
The other thing is the Steelers have faced the second most snaps of empty of any team in the league this year.
Really?
And
That would make sense with the
They've not been
corners.
very good defending empty. So I'd be curious. I mean, the Eagles are going to know that.
Right.
That doesn't mean they're going to play more empty, but just a thought. They've faced a lot of snaps of empty, and they've not been very good defending it.
Being that they're not great at corner to me, I would do it.
That is interesting. You
More-
wonder again
more
if
11.
Flores,
Do we have empty
if Flores,
He's
who
just
did
not
like
a-
to blitz in
we
Miami, could
can't.
influence that game plan a little bit more
There we go.
for Mike
What do you-
Tomlin.
Jay, what do you got?
I like empty.
Right.
I just don't. We're just not an empty. When you think of the Philadelphia Eagles
You don't-
in 2022,
The Eagles run out of
it
empty.
just-
That's when they just do
Right.
design runs out of
yeah,
empty.
I know. I'm just saying it's
But
just
again,
not something.
with a week off, you wonder if, hey, they put in, I'm not saying they're going to be an empty on 30% of their snaps.
Of course.
But maybe they just put something in, to attack,
They-
they could.
They have it. So the way the fans know, every offense can run their plays out of empty, their passing concepts out of empty, because you're just plugging and playing guys. Everyone on the team knows what this position on the field does.
Right.
And you just name that position, and the guy goes and run a route. It's the same routes.
Right.
It's just out of empty. We run this out of empty. This guy goes to the same spot, just from a different
Yeah, I
alignment.
mean, a lot of time, usually an empty, the back lines up to the twin side, the two receiver side. Often he'll run the same route from there that he would if he was offset in the backfield.
Exactly.
Right. So it's just he's in a different spot.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think I don't want to say predictable, but I do think we've seen a lot of empty where Jalen Hurts just takes it and runs up the middle, and
And
it's
by the way, you
succeeded
can
for
do that
them.
too. You can spread them out, and then you see what you get.
Right.
If
You
you
like
like
it, you
picture
go.
you get before the snap.
Sure. And
Yeah.
maybe they draw something up where he's supposed to throw the ball,
Yeah.
definitely, just to
Yeah.
catch him by surprise.
It's only two thoughts with empty. When you go empty, you either back off or you blitz everybody.
Right.
And I don't think this is and this is why they're struggling with it, because
Right.
they don't have the personnel to blitz
Blitz
everybody.
everybody. No, it makes a lot
And
of
I
sense.
don't think they feel confident in their corners to really match up,
match up,
to
yeah.
truly match up.
But I know
We'll see if Witherspoon's return kind of, and it's just one guy,
Yeah.
but if that changes any of the
Jeff,
thinking.
we saw last year here in Philly when the D coordinator doesn't trust what he's got, you're not going to be very aggressive because you can't if you don't have the
Yeah.
right personnel. You see this year when Jonathan Gannon has the personnel, you could do some good things. You don't have to blitz a lot more. They are, but you also could disguise, and that's the thing that I think has been so great with this defense.
Great point, because when you don't trust it,
Definitely.
the last thing you want is big plays. So when you don't trust it, you're playing defense not to give up big
Coach
plays.
it to your personnel.
That's all you're doing.
There you go.
And these guys have jobs, right? And they want a job
now.
Get
next
paid
year.
well.
right? And they want a job next year. So you can say as defense coordinator we didn't have personnel, but you can't explain, doing bad things with bad personnel, right?
Well, Jay, that's a good segue. There's a way to make money without having a job. It's called investing, and you can
Yes.
invest with our friends at Mojo. You need to be on Mojo. It's the app that everybody's getting now, where you invest in your favorite players. Forget Fortune 500 companies that you know nothing about. You know about football, so why not invest in players? There's real stats, real value. With Mojo, you can buy shares in players. It guarantees you on a payout based on career-ending stats. There's no off days. There's no off season. It's not just about what you're doing on the field. Things off the field, trade, injuries can affect your market share. And of course, you can cash out at any time. You can also build a huge portfolio and buy and sell on your own terms every play, every game, every season. It's quarterbacks, it's running backs, it's tight ends, wide receivers. Every kind of athlete, skill position player, Mojo offers for you to invest in, all right? So Mojo is available in New Jersey on iOS, and just by downloading the app, you have a chance to win $10,000 in free shares of player stock. Now, if we're looking at some guys from today's game, all right, from Mojo.
I got one.
Let me tell you this. On Mojo right now, Miles Sanders is at $11.25 a share Now, if the Eagles, as
Don't
we
look
talked
at me.
about,
I have no idea what any of this means.
is all theoretical. If the Eagles bring in a running back,
Yep.
right? If they bring in Kareem Hunt, or if they bring in
David Montgomery, or someone
Montgomery,
else.
wouldn't that theoretically
Stock
would
would go
impact
lower.
Miles
Of
Sanders'
course it would.
share? Don't you
Absolutely
think?
would.
Like now
100%.
doesn't seem like a good time to buy Miles Sanders stock. I would sell it.
agree.
If I had.
You would wait.
I would
You
wait.
till
I
after.
want to see if there's a trade Tuesday,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I would hold.
Yeah.
You would hold, and then if there's the thing is, here's the thing: if you hold, and then they do trade for a running back, then you're SOL. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So now might be
I
a
know what
time where you
SOL
want
means.
to. You know what it means.
That's
what
the
you've
only
never-
thing-
sorry,
That's
out
the
of
only
luck.
thing that you said in the last 3 minutes that I understood.
We've seen some good. We've seen some good stuff on Mojo with Robinson leaving to go for the Jets, and
Yep.
then Travis Etienne, like he
Right.
was low,
Way
now
up.
you can buy high.
Yep,
You know
yep,
those.
yep.
I mean, not buy high, but get him while he's low, and his stock price goes up. So I think there's some good things going.
Here's another great one. All right, Kenny Pickett's stock went up when the Steelers drafted him, right? Or even from training camp when it looked like he was playing well. It went up from $10 to $12, and then it peaked at $22. But in recent weeks, because he hasn't played from a stat standpoint real well, he's down by $2. Now we also know he had to face Tampa Bay's defense. He had to face Buffalo. He comes here to Philadelphia, another good defense. Pretty soon, as he gets the weeks going and the schedule may lighten up for them, I would think that right now, maybe after this game, especially if he doesn't play well and loses today, is a good time to buy Kenny Pickett shares at low value and then watch it rise as the season. You disagree?
Sell with this
Oh
roster.
man, you
and
don't
this
think it's going to
team.
get better for him?
No, the
After
scheme,
today?
man,
With
it's a
this
stiff
team?
scheme, man. Their schemes
No,
are great.
sell it.
Yeah.
Kick it.
All
run
right,
it.
all right, wait. I'm second level thinking here, because you don't have to get rid of him after the year. You can buy him now
got
at
one
low.
for you.
Wait till they change coordinators in the offseason, then all of a sudden,
He's gonna have that much opportunity. You never know in the National Football
I mean, he
League,
ain't going
especially-
anywhere, right?
It's a first-round pick.
Yeah, that's what I'm
It's a 4
saying.
to 5 year deal.
Nowhere to go but up.
4+1, yes.
Yeah, well, you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
I would buy Kenny Pickett low right now. But you guys,
Well,
I get the scheme.
Foreman,
out
the
of
running back for Carolina. McCaffrey's traded, right?
it. Yep.
Chuba Hubbard's out today. Get Foreman stock. Why? Because he's going to be the guy today. And by the way, Atlanta's down 3 DBs.
Okay.
They should be able to move the football. He'll score some touchdowns. Foreman's the guy to get real cheap today.
All right. That's Deontay Foreman. There's a lot of Foreman there. Deontay
There's a funny
Foreman.
way of spelling it, yes.
All right.
Not Chuck Foreman.
No, 44.
Right.
Again, Mojo is available on New Jersey on iOS, and just by downloading
Great
the app,
guy.
you've got a chance to win $10,000 in free shares of player stock. You'll just go to the link that'll be in the description box for this YouTube video or podcast platform. We'll have it there. All right, fellas, now it is time for our Players to Watch segment. All right, it's presented by Game Time Watches. What time is it? It's game time, all right? Game Time Watches is the leader in licensed sports watches. Get your favorite NFL, NHL, or MLB team logo watch now at GameTimeWatch.com. Eagles fans, Game Time Watch is partnered with Inside the Birds and is offering a special promo code for 20% off using code ITB20. That's ITB20 for a 20% off on GameTimeWatches.com. And that code applies not just for Eagles watches, not just for NFL watches, but anything not already discounted. There's lots of styles to choose from. Men, women, kids. Check out the men's varsity style watches. Shiny face, big team color logo, metallic accents, metal case, and the thin black silicone strap that make it an everyday style watch. Check out the Varsity Drip Art Edition too at GameTimeWatch.com. Jason Avant, who is your Game Time Watch player to watch today?
Jalen Hurts, I have 29th ranked pass defense he's going against with no pass rush, only Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. I criticize Adam for picking the quarterback, and then you go and do the same thing?
I have
do it
to
every
today.
week.
It's
Not every
just-
week, but when you do, I do.
It's just a favorable matchup with what's going on.
All
in
right, give me
Pittsburgh
an
right
idea. Are you thinking like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns? Or?
I'm going to say that he's going to be over 300 yards passing today. They're giving up
Okay.
275. He can go 25 more than that. Now
All
I don't
right.
know how many pass touchdowns. He's not a high pass touchdown guy, but I think that he'll have he'll account for maybe 2 or 3 touchdowns today.
All right, Greg Cosell, who is your Game Time Watchers
Just
player
like
to
our
watch?
player of the game that I had to send to you.
Player to watch. It's
Oh,
the
okay.
same thing. Player to
Okay.
watch. Who
Same
are we
guy.
watching for?
A.J. Brown.
AJ Brown. Why?
Because I think that you're dealing
Because
with...
it's good.
That's true.
I think he's pretty good, yeah. And I think you're dealing with a secondary that is, a lot of moving parts right now with the Spoon Prop back but missing 4 weeks.
Do they play sides, the Steelers? Like, is he going to be against the same guy every
Normally they
snap?
play sides. They don't match up. So I just think the game is set up well for A.J. Brown to have a good game. I mean, if you want a number, I can flip a coin, but let's say 7 for 123.
I think Eagles fans would be happy
shot
about
plays.
that. 7 for 123. Yeah, that sounds like shot
Weather's
plays.
perfect for it.
Adam, who's your player to watch?
Going to be
Game Time
Hurts.
watchers?
He will account for a minimum of 2 touchdowns, obviously passing and running. People make a big deal about it, the passing touchdowns. I don't worry about that. As long as they're scoring, which they continue to do. This is just sets up once again to get a big lead at the half and run the football, and he's obviously part of the run game.
Did you say run the football?
They will in the second half.
I saw the. I don't know if
they don't need to establish the run. They don't need to establish the run.
They don't need to do that.
No.
But running the football, there's no correlation to throwing the football.
I've heard that forever. It's just so funny.
Yeah.
Mike Zimmer's convinced that there is, but Mike, you would be wrong.
But do you think when people say that, they obviously they mean to say
It's an easy
from
thing
a
to say.
formational standpoint?
Yeah, they
and
probably
what you
do, and they don't have time
And
to
be
explain it.
physical and be
Yeah.
physical. I get
Yeah.
that. I get
Yeah.
that.
All right, my player of the game. I went defense today, fellas. I went with Hassan Reddick.
Really?
I think
Okay.
he's going to have some opportunities to chase down Pickett. He might see a sack, a strip.
And he'll work against the right tackle.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Okorafor, right.
Yeah.
Chucks, as they call him, right?
Okorafor.
Chucks
Yes, yeah, he's
Okorafor.
beatable. He's played left and right. Yeah, I like that one. It's
I would
creative.
say Marcus Epps gets his first interception today. The only
Adding
person in
that.
the starting secondary that doesn't have an interception.
Is that a
Marcus
second
Epps.
player to watch from
No,
Jason Avant?
just-
All right,
yeah,
Marcus
just
Epps.
first
Just a random thought.
Yeah,
Just a
random
I like it.
Okay.
I like it.
Random thought.
Okay.
Random thought brought to you by Game Time Watches. All right.
.com.
Excellent. Before we take one last look at the spread and total, I want to remind everybody that food from Jack's Bar and Grill here at Rivers Casino, it's available at every home game for the Eagles. Its specials include $2 Miller Lights, $15 bottomless chips and salsa, and $12 pretzel bites, along with $16 easy peel shrimp. We've also got the home field advantage spin and win contest for bettors who place qualifying game day bets in the Bet Rivers Sportsbook. They enter the spin to win contest held every Birds home game. You just got to place at least a $50 bet on pro football. Maximum number of entries per wager is 3 per transaction. 8 winners are pulled via random drawing to spin the wheel. And prizes include free play, cash, 2 tickets to a Birds home game, and if the Birds win, 2 more winners will be selected. 8 plus 2 is 10, by the way. So
It
it's
is.
10 overall winners because the Birds haven't lost
Even he knows that.
this year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They've also got their Choose the Champs weekly Pick'em Challenge where all Rush Rewards members get 1 free entry each week, all right? Top 20 finishers, the first place will win $1,000 in free play. All that in here at River Sportsbook and Casino, where Philly loves a winner. All right, last I checked, the Eagles were 10.5-point favorites. I don't think that has changed. That is their largest
And it's
of the
been that,
year.
by the way, most of the week it hasn't really moved.
And it's a low total at 42.5, which means if the Eagles are going to win by more than 10.5, and they're thinking a total of 42.5, they don't think the Steelers are going to score very much today.
No.
So, Jason, who's winning and by what score?
I believe I had 30-17. I'm not sure.
Correct.
You did have
Was it
37. I feel like this is a test of your memory more than a test of who's right.
30-17,
I know.
Yeah, 30-17 Birds. I think that we're going to increase our number. We're right at 26 points a game. I think we're up to 30.
All right, so you got you're taking the Eagles to cover the
Eagles.
spread and going over the total of 42. All right, Greg, who wins?
Somehow I think I had the same score.
You
do.
did have the side. Somehow
Yep.
I think sometimes you guys just say
No,
like
I know.
at the same
Score.
time.
No, you-
right?
And for the Eagles.
You're not
I-
having a senior moment. You actually have that, right?
Yeah, 30. Yeah, I picked the Eagles because, I just think this defense for the Steelers, to be honest, is just not very good at this moment. I mean, they don't really have very many playmakers on this defense. They don't have that guy, in my view. When a defense is struggling, obviously they're working all week on schematics and things like that, but I think they don't have. Fitzpatrick may be the only guy, and can he make some plays without question? But I don't really think they have a true playmaker on this defense.
Besides
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, Adam, who wins this game?
I've got it for the 7th straight week. I will be picking the Eagles, and I've got it 27-17.
27-17. So you believe the Eagles will just barely not cover, but you like more than the 42 and a half.
is so much to give up.
Yeah, especially for a 42 total. I mean, that's very strange. All right, I picked the Eagles to win 23-14. But I will say, as we've gotten closer to game day, I've gotten a little bit more sheepish about that pick. There's just something about how hard it is to be undefeated this far into a season.
You love overthinking these things.
I'm a big law of averages guy. The Steelers haven't won here in like 50 years, so there's just something that made me a little tentative about this. All right,
What's happening?
I picked the Eagles to win, but if you know, I'm not going to change it. But I'm starting to doubt myself.
You need to channel your Rob Thompson way of doing things.
I do.
Think it through and go with something.
All right, Eagles win, no doubt about it. No doubts, no skepticism. Remember, you can bet the game right here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook in Philadelphia, where Adam and I are about to have a big watch party for the game. Or you can just go to the Bet Rivers app. Big thanks to our friends at Rivers, Sky Motor Cars, the teams at Rebel Hill and Public Square. Check out our coverage after the game on InsideTheBirds.com, and check out the Inside the Birds post-game show with myself, Adam Caplan, Trey Thomas. So for Jason Avant, Greg Cosell, and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thank you for watching Inside the Birds pregame live. Enjoy the game. Go Phillies.